it was interesting to me how quickly the people turned on people. We would have neighbors calling in on neighbors.
And some of the rough ones were the ones against child sexual abuse cases, and there's way too many that happen in Davis County.
The cartel members will take a small child or a baby and throw it into the river, knowing that the U.S. agents are going to save that child, giving the rest of everybody time to get out of there. At night, we're at dinner, phone rings. It's the White House. Can you guys come to the White House in the morning? We want to meet.
Davis County Metro Narcotics Strike Force here in Davis County, they've seized over 60 pounds of powder fentanyl. So 60 pounds of powder fentanyl can kill over 4 times the population of the state of Utah.
All right, welcome out to God and Country. I'm Uriah Kennedy, and this is Ingrid Bettridge. We have some pretty good guests with us. One of our best guests yet that everybody should know, Mike Smith, coming up from Utah County, current sheriff down there. And then he was already here a couple weeks ago during our Memorial Day special. Jon Atkin running for sheriff here in Davis County. We're going to be discussing a lot that has to do with, obviously, crime in all 3 counties, or as much as possible anyway, and as well as what part of those things is going to be affecting you as a public. Remember, like, subscribe, and share. We get plenty of suppression out there on YouTube, as everybody knows, so we really depend on you as the public to get us out there. So share it out there on your social media, help us kind of branch out a little bit. Look down below to get our merchandise, the t-shirts that we have down below. Try to support the channel. And then when you're listening to the podcast, this is long format. We recognize that these are 2-3 hours long, but it gives out a lot of pretty significant information you really need to know and understand. It's going to help you with your everyday decisions as well as your political decisions and things you just need to know about our community. So watch the full podcast, even if you're doing it in sections, and we greatly appreciate the support. So again, both Mike Smith and Jon Atkin, we're going to be discussing a lot of important subjects today. We'll kind of start off with how they got into office and why they ran for office and where that's led to. We'll start with Mike here. Mike, where'd you start and how did you become sheriff down there in Utah County? What led to that decision-making process?
That's a great question. And you're probably thinking, what's leading to you wanting to do it, right?
Yeah.
So I've been in law enforcement for 32 years. I actually started off in Pleasant Grove. I worked up through the ranks in Pleasant Grove Police Department. And in 2012 became the chief of police in Pleasant Grove. But during that time, I'd had a lot to do with the county. I actually was a part-time officer at the county, and then I'd been on the county Metro SWAT team for 18 years and was one of the commanders on that team. And so when the sheriff's seat came open, it wasn't really something I ever aspired to do. I was pretty happy being the chief of police. A lot of the county deputies started to approach me and ask me if I would run for sheriff. And we had a lot of chiefs in the valley, in fact, all of us that got together and said, hey, we're not comfortable with the way this is going. It's looking like it's going to go with who's running, and someone in this room needs to step up and run.
What do you think it was about you? Was it your leadership skills, or just what did they know about you that made them ask you to run?
Yeah, it was probably that. I mean, I'd had a lot to do with them. Being a commander on the SWAT team with a lot of them. And just had good relationships with them. We had a really great department in Pleasant Grove. Pleasant Grove is one of those departments that they underpay, so it's hard to retain officers. But through morale and other things, we're able to try to retain the best we could and provide a good place for people to work. And they saw that, they liked that, and they wanted that brought down to the sheriff's office. And running for sheriff is something that was completely outside of the realm of what I'd ever done in my life. And you would think, I'll tell you this, I was completely wrong, but I thought, if I run for sheriff, I'm running against professional, ethical law enforcement officers, and we're all just going to run on who we are and, our careers and what we've done and why I should be the sheriff.
Makes
Well,
sense.
it doesn't work that way. It was a cutthroat race. In fact, even
Welcome to politics,
yeah,
right?
I know. It was horrible. Probably one of the worst experiences of my life, and every election's kind of been like that. It brings out the worst in people. As far as being a politician, I'll tell you, I think my weak point is I don't want to be a politician. I want to be a sheriff. I want to be a law enforcement officer. And there is, even with, I'm a Republican. I run on the Republican ticket. I'm very conservative, but I'm also very honest. And so when people ask me questions, we want you to do this, that, or the other, I know what they want me to say, but I will tell them what the reality is. I can do this or I can't do this, and here are the reasons why. This is the way the law works. And that hurts you because people don't want to hear that. They just want you to throw out what they want to hear, and they all clap and you get their vote. And I'm like, I don't want to be that guy. I don't want to be that guy that basically lied to you to get into office and with no intention of ever doing the things that you want me to do, because I knew I couldn't do them. So that part of being a sheriff has been, at least in the campaign process, it's been a little weird. But I think most people respect that. They respect those values and where you're coming from. And then I'll just tell you this, the office of sheriff has been such an amazing seat to be in. Being a chief of police was awesome, but being a sheriff and answering directly to the people, it's just been, it has been very fulfilling to have that role and to be able to do things the way law enforcement ought to be done and not how a politician sitting over top of me wants law enforcement done. And I've really enjoyed that aspect of it.
I mean, because as a city chief, you work at the pleasure of the mayor.
You
right?
do, yep.
It's an appointed position. How was that transition going from being hired by going through the normal interview process to being appointed to now becoming that political side? Because transitioning from kind of that private world to I've got to actually address the public and become that politician mentally, what was that transition like?
Again, outside of who I really was as a law enforcement officer, so there was a transition there. It took a little bit to probably polish off some of that those rough edges in that area. And I don't consider myself a politician or polished in any means. I'm pretty rough and raw, and I tell you what I think, and I'll stand by it. But it's been a process. It's taken a few years. It is a different role. As soon as you pin on that badge of sheriff, it attracts a completely different crowd of people than you've ever associated with in law enforcement before. There's a different side that whatever their conceptions are of what the office of sheriff means and what you can do for them as a sheriff, that they're drawn to you. And so that part's been a little bit interesting.
Well, it's also going to be quite liberating because, like you said, you don't answer to anybody. You are the supreme authority when it comes to law enforcement in Utah County. You answer to the people, and there's nobody above you.
Yeah, so a great example of that is, you roll back to our infamous COVID days, and I'm on a phone call one morning, and I knew I was on the phone call with commissioners throughout the state, mayors throughout the state, the governor's office, and I didn't know anyone else other than that was on there. I didn't know, I don't think any other sheriffs were on there, but I was on it. And so I'm listening to their plans, and they're talking about a statewide mask mandate and mask gathering mandate. And it's kind of going in my opinion, it's going in the wrong direction. And, all these mayors are chiming in and commissioners. And so finally I said, hey, this is Sheriff Smith. I'd like to say something if I can. Sure. And so I said, hey, I would encourage you mayors and you commissioners to talk to your law enforcement and find out how they feel about this. Because I'm telling you right now, as the sheriff of Utah County, I will not enforce those mandates. It is the wrong thing to do. We're not going in that direction. And if you choose to, I'm not going to enforce it. Well, the media was also on that call, so it lit up my world. It was kind of cool. I got some really cool memes out of it. I got memes sent to me with like COVID molecules around my head, and I'm killing people, and so. But that part of it, it was the wrong thing to do. Even to the point where, you had people. If you remember, they found the outdoors again, right? So people started camping, and you have entities that wanted to enforce mask rules and gathering rules up in these camping areas, and you're going, what are we doing here? And so we pushed back pretty hard, and really stood on the side of freedom on that. You're free to wear a mask if you want. You're free to not wear one. You're free to do whatever. It was interesting to me how quickly the people turned on people. We would have neighbors calling in on neighbors. Hey, my neighbor's got a bunch of people at their house and they're not supposed to. And you're like, what are you doing? Why are you calling? I'm sure they're having a family party. It doesn't matter.
That how the Gestapo starts?
Yeah. I remember it. This is rolling into Thanksgiving, and we were getting tons of stuff. About can we meet with our family, and I did a post. It's probably the biggest post I've ever done, but I posted a picture of the Constitution and said, I've got a lot of questions on this. Here's your permission slip to enjoy Thanksgiving with your family, and posted a picture of the Constitution. And because that's
a great post.
That's where we live. This is America. And it was just a weird thing to go through. But being a sheriff, post. I was able to, that long story short, I was able to stand in a position and say those things as a sheriff where the chiefs weren't. Their politicians, their city managers were saying, you just be quiet about this. In the background, the chiefs are like, thank you for saying this. And the sheriff just has a different role. And we're able to say the things that need to be said, and go around a political layer saying, nope, you're not going to do that. As a chief, there were several times when I was told, you're not going to say that. And usually I said it anyway, and I'd get in a little bit of hot water, but because that's just who I was. But the role of the sheriff is awesome. We have had campaigns, since the time I was sheriff. We've had kind of whisper campaigns. Some got a little louder than others, about taking the role of sheriff and making it an appointed role. We've had,
we saw that.
Yeah, we've had through different counties. There's been a few commissioners that have kind of got on that bandwagon. There's, even in my county at the time, I had a county attorney that was horrible. I will say that publicly, and he was looking to do that same thing, and so. I came in as sheriff in 2018, and there was, sheriffs were always talking about we need to do something about this. I was the president of the Sheriff's Association, and this was kind of stirring back up again, and so we got serious about it. I said, let's get a bill, let's run a bill, and let's protect the office of sheriff. And so I got a meeting with the Speaker of the House, who was Brad Wilson at the time. And people, when I did that, people were like, well, the Speaker doesn't run bills. And I'm like, well, I'm going to go see if he'll run my bill. He's going to see if he'll run one for the Utah Sheriff's Association. And so I got a meeting with him. We went up and met, and Brad was awesome. He's like, yep, I got it. I'm going to run this for you. I'll do it. I love it. And I didn't even have to go to the Senate. Brad went to the Senate and got the president of the Senate to sponsor or be the co-sponsor on the Senate side of the bill. And it sailed through the legislative session. And if you remember, it went on to the ballot. And I will say, when the attorneys put the verbiage out on this, it was the ballot language that you read. It was weird. I had a lot of people call me, Sheriff, is this a good thing? I'm like, it actually is a good thing, but when you read it, it sounds weird. But all it did was it took the office of sheriff and it placed it into the Utah State Constitution and protected it as an elected office.
We talked about how verbiage can often get complicated when it goes to the attorneys.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Last week.
really complicated.
So as horrible as it is to go through an election process, a sheriff being elected is so important. I mean, it's the only elected law enforcement office in the United States.
Well, nothing sounds more patriotic than a sheriff asking, can we be elected by the voice of the people?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, John, let's go into
Yeah.
your beginnings of how you got into law enforcement, and then
Please, yeah. So my very beginnings actually started on the military side. I joined in the Army National Guard as a military police guy. I went to Fort Leonard Wood and went through the military police academy there. And then I came back and started going through college and started raising a family.
my kids just went through Fort Leonard Wood too in boot camp.
Yeah, it depends on the time of year. Summer's terrible and winter's terrible.
They
Spring
went
and
through
fall
dead
are okay.
summer.
Yeah, that humidity it's rough, and there's a lot of ticks out there, especially in the woods. And so you got to be comfortable with that. Loved it. It was a great experience. And I transitioned over to the Air Force with the Air Force Security Forces, which is also the law enforcement side of that. Then my initial start with the state was for the Department of Natural Resources, a DNR, as a law enforcement park ranger up in northern Utah. I loved it. It was fantastic. Got to go all over the state, patrolling on boats, on side-by-sides, on dirt bikes, and we have snowmobiles. It was a blast. It was great, especially in the state of Utah.
I've spoken to a few of those DNR reps. I'm like, you guys are actually getting paid to do this?
Yeah.
I don't see where this is a job at all.
Yeah, it was a
They would
blast.
just grin at you and say,
They don't get paid well to do that.
Yeah, that was the difference.
they don't get paid well. But I'm like, but you're still getting paid to
Yeah.
play on a snowmobile.
Yeah, then the other arm, when I was in, it was separate wildlife, and then the park ranger side for the recreation and the wildlife folks. They'd go out and they'd go do hunting in their plain clothes, and they'd kind of do undercover stuff, but they'd still hunt, but make sure people are still following the laws. So it was an awesome gig, and I loved it. But the problem is you start raising a family, and when do people recreate? Holidays and weekends. And so I quickly started looking at this. I'm like, if I do this, I'm gonna hardly ever see my kids, because every time they're out of school, I'm gonna be working. And so that was on my mind. And so I started looking around a little bit, and then the Davis County Sheriff's Office offered to pick me up. And back then we were running the paramedic service out of patrol. And I already had my prereqs, already had my bachelor's degree at that point. They're like, hey, if you want to come work for us, we'll send you through paramedic school. And so I went and worked there in court security. Then I went through paramedic school, finished that, and went to patrol and had a blast. Worked on that element, and also in the criminal investigations, person crimes, fraud. And some of the rough ones were the ones against child sexual abuse cases, and there's way too many that happen in Davis County, I'm sure, all over the state of Utah. I'm sure it's a problem. Then I went into internal affairs, where I'm at now. I've been doing that for the past 3.5 years, so it's been great. The internal affairs aspect has been interesting to balance. The one thing that was kind of my go-to, I was on the SWAT team. I came off that last year. I was one of the team leaders for the Davis County SWAT team. And so it was kind of the balance. I had the law enforcement side and I had the internal affairs side, and it was good. It was very enjoyable. And spent a couple deployments in the middle. Spent one over the Middle East, and last year I went out to Poland, Eastern Europe, and did a little bit of work at the military volunteer base. Got paid, but it wasn't a "you will go." It was a "hey, do you want to go?" And that was fantastic. I could go out there and do some great stuff. Work with NATO. Work with.
Because you're still active National Guard, or
I am. Yeah, so I'm an intelligence officer now with the Utah National Guard. So I got a commission several years ago. I think it was a little over 5 years ago now. And that's a whole different world, coming from the enlisted side and then the officer side. And then as well as once getting into intelligence, man, one thing I tell people is I didn't know how much I didn't know until I got into Air Force intelligence, because we start going over things like the EM spectrum, radio waves, political and military affairs of countries throughout the world, and what ticks and centers of gravity and how everything's interconnected, economics, historical factors within countries, specifically look at China and Taiwan and just how that came to be. And it really requires you to do a lot more homework and research about what led people to where they're at now, so that way we can also have an anticipation of what people might do under given circumstances. And so that's one thing that I've thought about with law enforcement is I've seen, at least up in the northern Utah, is a frustration I've had is we've very much been reactionary. I'm like, there are ways that we can be proactive to deal with some of the problems we face and get ahead of things. And so that's kind of where my mind goes to get better at that aspect. But no, I love law enforcement. I'm also part-time firefighter, paramedic, so I stay involved in all the avenues and areas within public service.
So TV always paints internal affairs as the bad guy amongst the cops. So
Yeah.
is that true? Does the cops and internal affairs get along?
Sometimes a lot of it's just the misconception. So it's like when you get down, it's like, look, my job is a fact finder. I get a case and I'm directed to go investigate something, and I go through every avenue I can to find what the facts are. Don't have any axe to grind. I just try to find what the true legitimate facts are and talk to folks, and that's where we run it. Sometimes the TV kind of makes it look like they're kind of out to get. It's like, no.
The TV makes the drama out of it, but that's what people see. They want to know, well, what's the reality between internal affairs and the police force, right?
Yeah. And so, yeah, it's been an interesting position, but it's been great at the same time to be able to see how things run, how things work, and some of the areas within the office that we can get better and improve on.
Will you continue with all these extracurriculars once elected?
No, I would love to keep with the fire department, but that's not reasonable because, again, being elected, there's always, I'm sure Mike can agree, there's always going to be something that needs attention. And so I feel like on the fire and paramedic side that it would be a disservice if I was elected and I was taking time and putting it towards that when there are legitimate problems and issues and things that need to be accomplished. I've got 5 years left on the military side. I'll finish that out, but I also think that actually gives a synergistic benefit to the county because Hill Air Force Base 1 is the biggest asset and resource in Davis County. And I think having that relationship where I still am in the service on that aspect and to be able to work together with them, hopefully strengthen those relationships. But as well as I do have my top secret clearance still, I still am very much involved in seeing things play out on the national stage. And most things nationally trickle down to the local. And vice
They
versa.
always do.
Yeah, and vice versa.
Without a doubt.
And so I think that is a huge benefit for the office to be able to see some of the
technically, it
concerns.
sounds like you should be running for senator and then sheriff.
Yeah, like Mike, I like law enforcement. I love the people I work with, and that's been one struggle is going through this aspect and then working close with politicians and going to events. I like it because it gets after problems, but I like to sit down with the guys and gals and have a good chat.
Well, same question I had for Mike here is what's the transition been like going from where you're hired versus now you're dealing directly with the people and you're talking to
the people is fantastic, and I echo 100% that the position of sheriff should be elected by and for the people. That needs to be totally separate 100%. But it's been great getting out and talking to the citizens and folks. And one thing that's been very clear is just a lot of misconceptions with how things function. Kind of going back to also what Mike said is the explanation. I've noticed with a lot of individuals, some people like to rely on, trust me, I know better, so I'm going to just say this thing. But I like how Mike said that, we should have an explanation of why we're doing certain things. We should have an explanation and tell them the why and how we got to that end. And I think that resonates with people by and large. And I've had enjoyment having those conversations with them. Because a lot of people
can have an honest conversation with people like that. This is why, without
absolutely
having to answer somebody to say something wrong or have somebody say, "Hey, why did you say that?"
And I hate the little sound bites too because it doesn't really get to the problem. It doesn't really educate. It doesn't really have a good conversation. So I as well am not about sound bites. I like having the conversation about legitimate results and legitimate.
That's just a soundbite about a COVID mask, right?
Yeah, that was good.
And
that was easy.
My opportunities I've had to observe you interacting with the public, you do a good job. You don't tend to take offense, and you come across as just relaxed, laid back, and you answer without any reservation.
I think most folks, I think 95%, that's an arbitrary number, of all of us are reasonable human beings. And when we see people that are acting unreasonable, it's because maybe they don't understand the reasonableness behind it, if that makes sense. I think sometimes we overcomplicate or we try to pigeonhole things, and we shouldn't do that. We should have conversations, and there's going to be mutual understanding by and large. And I think that's one thing we're missing.
Do you have much interaction with UHP?
Yeah. On a daily basis, working along the Wasatch Front in Utah County, as far as calls go, our deputies, probably not a lot. I mean, you get into some of the more rural counties, and the UHP officers have a lot more to do. The troopers have a lot more to do with the local police, the sheriff's deputies. Along the Wasatch Front, not so much. I meet with UHP leadership on a fairly regular basis, so I have communications with them on that level.
But the officers don't interact much. Is there much in? Because I know there's a lot up in Davis County as far as unincorporated portions of the county where you're the law enforcement, right? There's no city police force.
Yeah.
But in Utah County, I think most everything down there's now part of incorporated in cities, right? Or is there still a lot of areas out there that's not incorporated?
Yeah, there's still a lot of areas that's not incorporated. There's about throughout the county, you're probably looking about a 8,000 population, about 8,000 that live in unincorporated.
In Davis County, how big is that?
More or less, but we also, like Utah County, we also have our contract cities. And so we provide contract law enforcement to 3 cities. Then there's the unincorporated, but unincorporated by and large in Davis County. I'm not sure how it looks like in in Utah. But a lot of them are now kind of being, in some ways, pushed to incorporate within cities. And some of them don't like that. Like there's portions of the West Hooper area, which is, Hooper's funny because it's split between Weber, and you have a Weber Hooper, and you also have a Davis side of Hooper. And there are some folks out there that aren't a fan, but there are some that want to, and so that's kind of a hard pill to swallow, hard to figure out.
I know you have a lot of contract cities too.
Yeah, we do. We have several. Our 2 largest being Eagle Mountain and Vineyard City. Then we have a bunch of small contracts with smaller.
I didn't know you guys contracted Vineyard. I thought Orm contracted with Vineyard, but Sheriff's contract with Vineyard. I know Eagle Mountain's pretty big.
Yeah, Eagle Mountain's. And they're not stopping. They're huge, and
So you guys are going clear around the other side of the mountain and doing that whole valley over there.
Yeah. Yep.
And that's getting massive out there.
It's massive.
It's the fastest growing community in this country, I think, is what I'm hearing.
It is. The growth rate out there is unreal, and our biggest problem is just working with the city closely to say, hey, you got to keep paying for more deputies because it is growing so fast that we don't want to lose. Once you lose control of crime in a city, it's really hard to get it back. We want to stay on top of it, so we push them really hard to keep those deputies up. And the reality is they're just like pretty much every other city. They're not where they need to be with staffing levels. Yeah.
Yeah, but they're struggling with their tax base out there because they got more residential than commercial. And
they do.
Commercial provides most of that tax base, and it's just not there yet. Davis County, we don't have that big of a problem.
We're kind of landlocked. Yeah, we're kind of landlocked, and the contract cities, they don't have a lot of commercial. That is also the caveat. Like Fruit Heights, it's pretty much landlocked. They're not going to be growing really anymore, but they also don't have a lot of commercial. Same thing with South Weber. West Point still has room to grow. That's where I live. There's a lot of farmland up there, but it's always sad to see that get sold off and developed within, even if it's commercial or residential, because, I love being out there. I've been blessed to be able to get an acre lot with my family and get to do the whole chicken, ducks, and sheep and have a good time.
That's why you got to have good county commissioners to make sure they can keep up with it, because a lot of these smaller communities, you're pulling from other communities in order to pay for it.
Yeah,
it's just,
you're right.
It's just the way it is.
Yeah, and that's one of the things I try to figure out at the tax base, because it's always a concern whether other people are having to support those services. And I think sometimes we can think out of the box.
I think as citizens of the county, we just kind of take that as, well, that's just the way it is, and we got to pony up, right? Because you can't leave them unprotected out there. So
and I think some of that kind of goes to as well as having a strategic plan, like a 3-year, 5-year plan to see how we can. If there are things we can do to make it a little bit more equitable among everybody else.
And a lot of these communities don't want to develop. They like the farming.
Yeah, like I love West Point how it is, and I don't want to, but there's only so much, and the state tries to get involved, and the state tries to tell people how much high density housing they need, and it's kind of a headache, and it's interesting when the state does things like that.
Utah County's got a lot more room than Davis County, because I mean, there's the mountain, and then there's the lake, and you can only go so far up the lake before you start hitting water tables. This is not developable out there.
Isn't there a master?
Utah County's got the same thing because you got the big lake out there, but there's just a lot more land out there.
But they still seem to develop in those high water table areas, which always concerns me. Growing up as a kid, there's houses all over areas where as a kid we were out wading through the water, spearing carp, and and now there's subdivisions out there, and you're going, oh my gosh.
Yeah, I used to love going out there when I was a teenager, jackrabbit hunting out there. That was a great spot out in that area. Now it's just full of houses.
Yeah. Well, I was born and raised down in Provo. I was way out there on Geneva Road and Harbor Park area, west side of Provo, and grew up swimming all day long in the Provo River.
You remember the year? Yeah, I know you'll remember this. Well, maybe you're not as old as me, but
The floods?
Yeah, the floods.
Oh, yeah.
So one of my dad's buddies lived down there in that same area, and my dad had a big Ford Highboy, and we would drive that truck right down a dirt road, which is now underwater, right? And we'd drive out in the middle of the fields underwater, and we'd sit in the back of his truck and fish out of the back of his truck.
Yeah. The lake came almost right up to our house while we were living up there, and we'd just ride our bikes down the road and into the lake.
Was that around the same time that the causeway out in got washed out because the levels got so high?
Wet, and there's the river going downtown Salt Lake, and they had to have sandbag that. That was that whole time, was it 82, 83?
Yep.
Yeah, and they had to get those pumps out in the Great Salt Lake.
I moved out from the big city. I grew up in Miami. So coming out to the country, I didn't think they had the kind of crime we had in the city. And lo and behold, we have the same problems in
It's
these
here.
small towns. West Point, just recently in your backyard.
Yeah, we did. We had a couple of shootings back to back, and it's like Mike said, it's always a concern when things get out of hand, and then it's like the rubber band snaps, and it's a catch up game, and that's always a concern when we get to that point.
And Utah County is exploding because it's Silicon Slopes, right?
Yeah.
You got a massive amount of new construction down there, a lot of commercial buildings going up, a lot of office buildings. So during the day, population goes up even higher
It's
because of all those buildings. People are actually, growing up, everybody was commuting to Salt Lake, right? Now it's
the other way.
a lot of them are commuting down to Utah County because of all
wife
those
and I-
office buildings.
A couple years ago on our anniversary, I'm like, hey, let's go out to breakfast. So we get up, go to breakfast, and traffic's horrible. We ended up going 3 or 4 places, couldn't get in. There was a waiting list for breakfast, right? So breakfast turned into brunch, which turned into a lunch because we couldn't go anywhere.
By then you're hangry.
Yeah, and we end up going to somewhere we didn't want to go because that's where you can get in. But we were having a conversation, and as we're driving, I says, hey, you know what? Look up the population of Utah County when we first got married. Because I remember we had this conversation that we would never live in Salt Lake County because I hated the congestion. I hated the traffic. I never want to live in a county like that. And lo and behold, Utah County is that same population now that Salt Lake was when we first got married. And I'm like,
No kidding.
And here we are living in what I never wanted to live in.
Well, you got the whole Lehigh, the whole stretch from Point of the Mountain, clear down to Pleasant Grove. All those commercial buildings going up, all those office buildings going up. I mean, they call it Silicon Slopes for a reason because Adobe's moving in, and then Oracle's moved in, and all these other big companies moved in. Now we're going to have data centers going out to Eagle Mountain, and that's going to increase the population out there. And the state's trying to keep up with just roads and freeways, and that's kind of the big touchy point is just traffic that's going out to the
horrible.
Eagle Mountain area. And just,
Yeah, my daughter lives out there, and of course, like we talked about, we hold that contract. But every time I have to go out there, it is just a nightmare to get out to Eagle Mountain, especially if you go, rush hour morning or evening. It's unbelievable. Some major work needs to be done in that area to open up the infrastructure.
they're not going to get anything done until 2028, apparently. According to all the senators we've talked to, it's just is jammed out there. But you guys got to look forward to a lot of data centers coming in. I mean, Amazon's already, I guess, starting. I think Google's starting one out there.
Yeah.
So you're going to have a lot of really, really big buildings going on up out there.
Yep.
And then the big thing up in Davis County is Hill Air Force Base.
Yeah.
Aerospace.
Yep.
Aerospace is massive. They're finishing the I-15 construction up here now. And that's been a disaster, been a long, long project, almost like as long as the Salt Lake project back in 2002 when the Olympics came here.
Yeah. It's at least we got the new West Corridor. That's substantially alleviated.
I haven't even been down that thing yet.
I take it all the time, but I live out
It's
that way,
nice.
so it's a nice little relaxing drive. But I think it's relaxing for too many people because I haven't seen so many rollovers on a road in the past 18 months.
Really?
Yeah, it's weavy, and I think people just they probably are texting and driving. And we had one that I was actually going up to the range to go do some firearms instructing about 18 months ago. And lo and behold, traffic's heavy. I'm like, all right, there's probably an accident up ahead of me. And sure enough, there was a car on its upside down. And it was unfortunate. I was the first one there. I went up, and the lady that was inside was probably in her 40s, and she was unrestrained and laying on the roof upside down. And yeah, and I think she ended up being a quadriplegic because she was unrestrained. And I went in there and checked on her, and yeah, she couldn't move arms or legs, and it was sad. It's like, yeah, it's unfortunate things that we have to deal with.
It's usually empty.
Yeah.
But people are usually going well over the speed limit on that road because there's nobody there.
On any road, that's the Utah way.
Is this?
Well, what is the difference, or what is the ratio between traffic violations you guys are doing versus other investigative work?
Traffic violations is endless. It's always there. And it's
how
always
much does the UHP pick up that and cities pick up versus how much does the sheriff's department actually do within the county? Obviously, outside of your
so
contracted cities.
Typically, the troopers are on the highways and freeways. That's kind of where their jam is for accidents, and also traffic control on those areas. And the cities take care of the cities, and the sheriff's office is contract cities, but also it's wherever we see it. It's there, and it's always going to be there. It's always going to be an issue, unfortunately. But it's balancing, taking care of that issue, and also taking care of actually the really serious issues.
So my brother-in-law is a UHP officer down in Utah County, Emery Calkins. If you ever run into Emery Calkins, a UHP officer, and he absolutely hates the winter. He curses it every year. It comes up. He said it starts snowing. He starts F-bombing, so I go around because then he gets called out, and it's just
Accident after accident.
accident all night long. And I mean, you guys are experiencing the same thing.
Yeah, the same thing. We're probably a lot the same in this aspect, where UHP pretty much sticks to, through Utah County, it's I-15. So even on a lot of your state roads, your local jurisdictions will end up taking care of stuff there as well. Some of the larger state roads UHP will hit, but traffic, there's always a traffic.
There's snow
problem.
traffic.
And here's the thing, is not many officers really enjoy being on a traffic detail. Some do, I think, but they're probably not the majority, and that's been my experience. In most cities, as you look at it, take Eagle Mountain, for instance, they have a huge traffic problem. They have a huge road rage problem out there because traffic's frustrating. People get upset. We get major road rage incidents out there.
Really?
It's
I'm not out there. I wouldn't even know.
It's been a huge problem. And so we're dealing with that. And, of course, nobody wants to get a speeding ticket, but, you don't want people speeding in front of your house, right? So there's your balance. You'll get people that'll call in and they're upset because, my kids are out playing in the front yard. You guys are doing nothing about the speeders that are going by my house. You lazy cops need to get off your butts and get out here and do something. And so, you try to address those problems, but it's always interesting. I found this in my career. I don't know if you've ever done this. You go out on a speeding complaint, you're on some traffic, you go down a couple roads down and run some more traffic, and you end up catching the people from the neighborhood that complain.
Yep,
Yeah.
absolutely.
It happens every time.
Or city council members.
Yeah, because it's like, don't speed in front of my house, but I don't think about it when I'm in front of someone else's house, and that's the reality. And so, I can tell you, for us, especially in, some of our contracts, like Eagle Mountain, for instance, my deputies are from call to call to call, that they don't have a lot of proactive time. So one of the things we're working on this year with Eagle Mountain, and I think it's going to go through, but we're still going through the budget process with them, is getting some deputies in place to be full-time traffic units, because the traffic out there is a huge problem.
That's kind of the main thing that people see when you're talking about law enforcement, is they see traffic cops, right? And that's what the main complaint is. Most people don't see what's behind the scenes. So I kind of wanted to start off with the traffic areas and what the public's generally going to be complaining about. But what we really want to dedicate the rest of this time to is what is going on behind the scenes that people just don't see, don't understand, don't know is there. And some of them kind of understand that it is there, but don't know the severity of it. And really, how bad is it? How dark is it? Because everybody looks at Utah. It's Utah. It's an LDS. It's a Christian community. It's what possibly could be going wrong in the state of Utah, right? We're not LA, we're not Chicago, we're not New York, right? We're not these other big cities that people think that there's a massive amount of crime. Well, and it's true in some aspects. We're not these big cities where there's drive-by shootings all the time or major gang violence, because there still is gang violence in our communities. But let's kind of dig deep into what is behind the curtain. What are people just not seeing? And the biggest, deepest things are child sex trafficking, human trafficking, drug violence. We were talking about cartel bosses coming up in here and assassinating people. So let's start with you and kind of tell me, or tell the audience here, as a sheriff, you're seeing a lot of this, and people just don't realize how big it is. So kind of walk us through.
I'll tell you, I love the fact that people don't realize it on a certain level. I mean, you need to be aware of what's going on around you, but on a certain level, it kind of sends a message back that we're doing an okay job for people, right? It's not something that when they go out and to commute and go places, go to work, whatever.
They'll live their lives, go to the gym.
That's not the first thing on their mind, that I'm going to, be a victim of crime today. And so I love that. But the reality is exactly what you said, is it's there. It's there. Evil.
But not being aware of it creates apathy too.
It does.
I mean, it's really good that people kind of have that safety net, that they really kind of feel safe.
I also think it depends on. I think it also depends on the type of crime. So to take child sexual abuse, for example, anybody that's in that realm of that victimization, nobody's going to want to talk about that.
Yeah.
If it happened to your kid, happened to your niece, if it happened to your sibling, that's something that's very close hold, and so that's also creates the difficulty within that aspect. But sorry, Mike.
Yeah, but you create apathy, and you want to get past that, and people understand that even though you're not seeing it, it is there.
Yeah.
And you need to support the law enforcement that's combating that, and know and understand that you got to keep your eyes open, not just be blind to this stuff.
Yeah. So the reality is, you're right. It's there. We deal with it on a daily basis. If you want to, whatever major crimes you want to talk about, if you're talking about violence, about murder, I can go back, like I said before, 32 years of law enforcement in Utah County. And 32 years ago, if there was a homicide in Utah County, it was a big deal. It's like, that's not happen in Utah County. It did happen, right? But it wasn't the norm. Well, I can tell you right now, in Utah County Jail, I think I think it's between 15 and 20 inmates are in there on murder charges. And I think right now there's 6 or 7 that are on capital murder charges. So,
shows what 30 years does to the community, right?
Yeah, it shows what growth does, right? It is still, in my opinion, Utah in general, Utah County, it's way better. No, I was going to you're fine. But it is an amazing place to live.
Notice we don't have Salt Lake County represented, because we know what's going on in Salt Lake County. And I don't know if you guys talked to Salt Lake County Sheriff, but that bleeds over.
It does. But it's an amazing place. It's an amazing place to live and raise a family still. And it's because of the hard work of the men and women in law enforcement that are out there every day busting their butts to keep evil at bay. So if you're talking violence, if you're talking drug activity, I'll tell you right now, we've always had it. It's always been part of our society. Recently, with the open border policies of the Biden administration, it just escalated beyond belief. People that want to put their head in the sand and think that did not have a lasting effect on our communities, we're not by the border.
We're not Texas. We're not Arizona, right?
It had an absolute lasting effect on our communities. I could confidently say, we knew we had cartel activity in Utah County prior to that. But we didn't have cartel based in Utah County. Well, we do now, thanks to our open border policies. We're dealing with cartel level crime activity all the time. That's what we get. As far as you alluded to, it's a pending case, so I can't say a lot about it. But even to the point where we've arrested people who have been legitimately identified, they're cartel hitmen who have killed people in our county. So that type of activity is happening. I'm sure Davis is the same. Our major crimes task force, our drug task force, that's what that type of activity is what they focus on. That's what is their bread and butter. They're watching for that type of activity, not just in our state, but they start those investigations down at the border. We watch those investigations come to fruition. As we know they're coming to Utah County, and we bring up Salt Lake County. A lot of times we know that these, historically it's always been Salt Lake County's been the destination. The load cars will come in, they'll go to Salt Lake County, and then it gets redistributed out to the communities. Again, that dynamic's changing a little bit, but it's still, by large, that's still what happens. I don't know if that's the same for you in Davis. So we do a lot of work in Salt Lake County. We do a lot of takedowns in Salt Lake County as we follow these investigations. And people don't want to hear this. In fact, in a recent meeting, I was called a racist for saying this, that it is cartel activity. It is undocumented illegal immigrants that are part of this world. Not to say that, U.S. citizens aren't too, because they absolutely are.
That is something that we do need to bring to the attention of the public more often, because we have good citizens who they picture who came across the border were these families who just wanted a better life, and they're here working and they're contributing to society and everything was hunky-dory. They don't want to know that with that came the drugs, and to get across here, they don't even know the process these people go through. Who would want to go through that process to get here?
So here's the sad fact of that is, especially, things are definitely changing with President Trump. He has started from day one, prioritize our border again. I had the opportunity to go down to the border a couple times during the Biden administration. Went down to Cochise County with Sheriff Daniels down there, who was doing. Sheriff Daniels, that guy is amazing. When I went down there, you would see the Border Patrol, their lots, and they were like ghost towns. So they're full of all their cars, inches of dust on top of their cars, chain linked in, padlocked shut, and nothing happening. It's like, Sheriff, what's going on here? And he's like, nothing. They don't work the border anymore. So all of those agents were pulled off. They were put in other areas. So the sheriff picked it up and started doing his own Border Patrol. And so he's got an amazing camera system down there, to the point where he built it out so well that the feds came back and like, hey, we want to be part of what you're doing, because he was doing such a good job. But getting to your point, what they've seen and what's been documented time and time again, and people just, again, it's the truth. People don't want to hear this if it doesn't fit their agenda, but the truth is the truth, and it needs to stand, is that if you come across that border, it is not just this little family that said, hey, we want to come to America and have a better life. The cartel was controlling that border, and they still do on their side. During the Biden administration, they were controlling the border far more than the United States ever thought of. You didn't come across that border unless the cartel allowed you to come across that border. And so when you get across, you owe them something. They're not doing it out of the goodness of their hearts. So you owe them something, and it's either going to be paid back by you're carrying some sort of narcotic for them, or you're going to deal some sort of narcotic. You're going to be sex trafficked. You're going to be work trafficked. It's getting paid back one way or the other.
People don't know about the work traffic.
The work traffic is all over the place.
Yeah, and that one's hard to be able to investigate and deal with too. The sex trafficking is horrible, but sometimes that's a little bit easier to investigate, because the work traffic, there's a lot more reluctancy because of the victimization. It's a lot different picture than the sex trafficking.
Well, let's go into that, because we just had a big company in Davis County get taken down because of abusing work traffickers.
Yeah.
I don't know if you know much about that.
I don't know a whole lot about that, but I've had conversations with a couple of friends, a couple of close friends that do construction, for example. And he's like, he's been in construction business for about 30 years. And he's like, I can't compete with this sometimes, because some of these guys, they go and they use people that are here illegally, and then they work on weekends when the federal government, other people aren't, on Saturdays and Sundays, or on holidays when people aren't paying attention. And he's like, there's no way I could compete with the cost. And how some of these companies and corporations or small level are able to do it for so much cheaper. And so that's also affecting business. Business people have been in business for decades. And that's a tragedy. That's unfortunate.
There was a construction company. I think you were mentioning it too.
Yeah.
And I
This
had it pulled
campaign's
up.
got me so tied into like work and campaign, work and campaign.
And a lot of these, it's just as simple as, you're placed in a, whether it's construction, landscaping, whatever it may be, you're placed in this position, you work for who you're told to work for, your paycheck goes to a bank they tell you that it goes to, and a cut of that paycheck goes back to the cartel before you ever get your hands on it, and so you're just paying it back.
There's also the threat to, and we know your family back there, and so if you don't abide by the contract for you're working this many years.
So here's the deal. I mean, I've talked to Border Patrol agents down there, and even during the Biden administration, they were as frustrated as anybody, probably more than anybody, because this is what they do for a living. They're not being allowed to do their jobs. But they would tell you story after story where, there are people coming across and say they're coming across the Rio or whatever, and they do a bust. And these guys have witnessed it where the cartel members will take a small child or a baby and throw it into the river, knowing that the U.S. agents are going to save that child, giving the rest of everybody time to get out of there. I mean, that's the type of humanity you're dealing with these people.
Yeah. And one thing a lot of people don't think about too with the sex trafficking and the human trafficking element, it's not just folks of the South America, it's also victims of places like China. They come here, and massage parlors are a legitimate issue, and it's a legitimate issue in Davis County where they're run, and they work closely with cartel to traffic these people. And yeah, it's terrible, and there's a huge problem with these things. And the state attorney general's office is one of the ones that kind of heads some of these programs. Secure is what one of them's called, and they've got so much work they can't get to it all. It's inundating, and they need more help at the county levels because the cities are so tied up. The cities, everybody's feeling the pinch for taxation, and they're like, well, we don't really have the money to give more resources, and it's like, well, we got to be able to get better at avoiding some duplicated efforts and actually dealing with the problems that actually affect our society and way of life. That's been one of the soapbox I've stood on. It's like, look, I'm very much concerned with what is it that's affecting our way of life, and it's going to influence that. There are other things that are important, like traffic stops. Yeah, that stuff's kind of important, and sometimes it's a means to an end to find bad guys. But I'm much more focused and want the attention on what.
Yeah, traffic stops are the least of it because that's just what people see.
Yeah,
right?
It's great PC to find.
This is what I'm going to talk about.
Yeah,
because being in this podcast, we have so many conversations with people about illegal immigration, and they're like, well, what's the big deal? They get over here, they work. It's like you were just saying. It's just people just trying to exist, right? I'm like, no, you have no idea the cost that costs our communities, from law enforcement. I mean, that's taxpayer dollars right there that needs to pay more law enforcement, overtime, whatever it is, because of the mass amount of illegal immigration. That's not even counting every single one of those illegal immigrants that show up to our hospital systems to get free health care. Doesn't matter how many of them are getting free food stamps and all these other public benefits because they figure it out. Doesn't count how many of them are voting and skewing our elections completely. Doesn't count how many of them are taking up our housing, which is making our housing more expensive because there's just not enough of it. The expenses go on and on and on and on. And when you look back at the Biden administration, see that during his administration alone, 20 million people came into this country. Yeah. Doesn't count the 20 million that were already here before that.
At least 20 million.
And if I can add just the one caveat to your list is those people here illegally that are getting victimized on a daily basis, whether sexually or whether they're being victimized for almost slave labor, because they're not being adequately reimbursed, but they're under the control of the cartel and these gang affiliations.
Still, they don't get away from it. Yeah. You came into our booth during the Republican convention down at UVU.
Yeah.
And you mentioned that you had somebody in jail right now that was a boy that was being sex trafficked by the cartel.
Oh, he's not in jail.
Well, he wasn't in jail.
We didn't take him to jail. We got him the help that he needed. But yeah, I can tell you that story. So we have our sex crimes unit is very active, and sex crimes. As a detective, I worked those cases too, and I think you mentioned you did. It is a tough position to work. It's a very gratifying position to work when you can seriously. I mean, you make life-changing good happen for people in their lives when you can work a good case. But we'll do periodically. We'll set up some stings. and they're expensive to run, so they don't happen as much as they should. A lot of times we're getting donations to help us do them because it's very labor intensive. But during these operations, you'll see the worst of human behavior happen. You'll get anything from just what we would call mainstream prostitution to a dad bringing a child to a location to be paid to have somebody have sex with their child. Just horrific things. But, we've had where the one you're talking about, this individual, he came across the border in Texas. And so when he came across, it was cartel controlled. Cartel took everything he had, all of his documentation, everything he had in life, and held it hostage from him. And then to pay it back, he was sex trafficked. He was a young, early 20s male that was sex trafficked across the western United States. And, lo and behold, we're running one of our operations and he comes through our operation. And we were able to liberate him from that situation. But those are the things that are happening.
What is the risks of liberating someone like that? Because the cartel doesn't go away just because you liberated him. I mean, he's still got family, he's still got all these other things. What was that conversation like, trying to get him to liberate, because he still has a lot of fear?
Ultimately, we hook him up with our victim advocates and with specialized help to help him work through that. But ultimately, I got to tell you, I've never followed him to know if he's...
So he remained in the country?
He did for a while. I don't know his status right now.
Interesting.
Or the status of his family back at home.
Or the status of his family.
Yeah, it's just tough there. Yeah. Well, let's kind of pull up this first thing, and I'll get comments on both of you. So this came out. Obviously, there's a big conversation about ICE retention and agreements with ICE. There's a lot of sanctuary cities and states out there that are doing everything they can against it. There's a big protest this last weekend against ICE, where they were busting up a U-Haul that the ICE officers are using to kind of transport some things, where the local communities are really fighting against this, not realizing, again, how much crime is going behind the scenes. Utah, we're sharing an ICE retention facility down in Las Vegas. That's completely inadequate. We'll start with you, Jon. Kind of tell us about how Davis County is working with ICE, how you would increase that, decrease that, what you do differently as far as if you were to be elected as a sheriff there, and then we'll go to this article and discuss what's facing Utah County.
So we do have a relationship, but we do not have a MOU, so memorandum of understanding, contractual agreement in that regards, in relation to the 287 Gulf program from DHS or ICE. We don't have one of those currently in place. You kind of hit it into it a little bit. My worry is if we don't have things that are overt, we're not open about what we're doing and having, I think even Mike said in this article, if you don't have a seat at the table, you're not involved in those conversations. And that is paramount, to be able to have a seat at the table, to be able to be involved in those conversations, to deal with these problems. And so I think that we should have at least a jail enforcement model. That way we can get to it, and we can, when individuals that are committing crimes in our communities, they're arrested, they're booked into the jail. And that way we can hold and get funding from ICE, and then until they're collected and processed at that point. Because in my mind,
what can you do to get that memorandum? Because you have one.
Yeah.
We'll talk about that. Utah County's got a memorandum of understanding. They're actively working with ICE.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's through the sheriff, and Mike, you correct me.
What happened in Davis County where we don't have that right now?
Yeah, and I can't speak to the current administration, kind of some of the thought process behind that. But my worry is, if you don't do anything, then you're inadvertently welcoming more people that are especially committing crimes that are here.
Well, as a sheriff, if you get elected here, can you get that? Yes. Would that be a major goal for yours?
Yes, absolutely. And that's where I'm after finding the people that are here committing crimes, affecting our way of life, that are also here illegally. And so that's my concern.
Without a facility here to retain people, what's the process like? How can we deport anybody without a facility?
Yeah, it's difficult. And Mike might be involved in more of those conversations, but from what I've seen, if there's there's only so much the county jail can do. If I remember right, if there's not these contractual agreements that we can't hold them more than 48 hours to be able to deal and work that out, there might be loopholes that is required to be able to go through that aspect. But the last thing we want is to arrest people that are committing crimes, especially felony level crimes, and then we can't retain them because
So Davis County, are we arresting and letting go right now if ICE doesn't come pick them up?
From what I have seen, no. From what I've seen, that we do have an agreement, but it's not, again, one of those 287 Gulf Agreement programs. It's something else. I haven't seen it. I've been told that that's the case. I haven't seen it, but I do know that we are retaining, and ICE is collecting them and processing them, taking them down on a bus to the facility. So I know that's happening to some degree, but also I'm always worried about playing the ambiguity. I don't like kind of dancing back and forth. I like to kind of make sure the public understands.
Have something solid in place.
Yeah, because that holds me to a standard. Like if I come out and I say this is what I'm going to do, I need to do what I'm saying I'm going to do. But if I kind of dance back and forth, what kind of standard am I holding myself to at the same time?
So on this one, let's see what this article came out. This came out in May of 2026. So just this last month, a couple of weeks ago, right?
Yeah.
And so you said that we've had a memorandum of understanding in Utah County for only 10 months, but now you got a seat at the table. How did that happen, and what does that MOU actually do for the county?
Yeah. It's a little bit of a long story, so you got the time, right?
Yeah, we got the time. That's what this podcast is for.
So to give you just a little bit of history on it, it's really been a roller coaster ride in the state of Utah. When I ran for sheriff in 2018, I won the primary election, and right after I won the primary election, I got a call from Senator Hatch's office, and they said, "Hey, can you come up to Salt Lake and meet with us? We'd love to talk to you." So I came up. I'm a chief of police. I'm not in office yet, and he had. And I don't remember their names, but it was the ICE leadership from DC. And the conversation was, we need to get inmates, we need to get our ICE holds, our detainees back into the Utah County Jail. The sheriff before me had just severed the contract with ICE to hold detainees. And Utah County Jail had been holding anywhere from 2 to, on an average, 300 detainees in their jail. So, of course, I'm like, well, I'm not the sheriff yet, but I'm happy to look into it, see where we're at with this. And so right from day one, before day one, before I'm even the sheriff, this was on my plate. And this was something that was staring me in the face. So it's kind of a roller coaster, right? Because at the time, you instantly start taking political heat from citizens saying, why aren't you holding these people? And then, you fast forward to today and, you're evil.
Why are you holding these people?
Yeah, you're evil for even talking to an ICE officer all of a sudden. So as I looked into it, the real problem was ICE. DHS was the problem, and they will readily admit it. You'd sit down and talk with them. Even in that first conversation with Senator Hatch and in his office, I knew enough at the time to say, hey, the problem is the standards that you put in place. So when we put these holds into the jail, they're on a civil hold, and our jails are designed to hold for criminal charges. And so right off the bat, the standards, the rules that you're supposed to follow to hold these people place your facility in jeopardy. And it opens it up to these very liberal watchdog groups out of DC that now have full access to your facility. And they will come in and they will gut you. And there's been a couple facilities, mainly there were some private facilities that were holding for ICE in the southern states that they shut completely down. They were able to file lawsuits against them, to get injunctions, and to shut them completely down. And so Utah County had received letters of intent that they were going to do that to Utah County they were all silly, trumped up things. I mean, when you talk about these standards, I mean, right off the bat, you could never, an ICE hold and one of our citizens on something else could never interact at all within your facility, even in the booking area. So jails in Utah, I don't know of any that have two separate booking areas. We don't. So as you're doing intake, if there's a cross somewhere and they see another inmate, you're in violation right there. And then you had all these silly things like they had to have a special haircut. They had to, a certain time of day, they get a squirt of a certain type of lotion in their hand. It's just all of these things that you're like, what is this? They're treated way better than our citizens were being treated under these standards. And so that's really was the problem. And so over and over again, we kept going back to ICE saying, you need to change your standards. We hold people for the U.S. Marshal's office, give us the U.S. Marshal's standards, and we're back in business. We would love to help you. And it was just over and over again, we can't do it, too bad, we can't do it. And it became the narrative. And then you saw politicians now jumping on this. And even Utah.
That comes down from the top, right? That comes down from the administration from regulating what ICE can. I doubt ICE is coming out and saying that of their own free will, saying all these regulations, right?
ICE is owned from the very top. So to give you, under the Biden administration, I went out to D.C., me and a couple sheriffs, we got a meeting with, I'm going to probably say his name wrong. I think it was Michael Lumpkin, I think was his name. He was the head of ICE at the time under the Biden administration. And you're right. His hands, even above him, his hands were being tied. He was, I want to help you guys. We understand this is the problem. There's no solution. There's nothing.
Well, they put that purposely in place so there isn't a solution. Yeah. That's how the left fixes their problem.
And it was the left. These were civil watchdog groups put together by the left that they're going to come out and they're going to gut you, and they're going to place lawsuits on you that now your citizens as taxpayers are being punished because we're using your tax funds to pay lawsuits that are being generated through these contracts. So it needed to be fixed. Once Trump got in, we went back out, me and a couple sheriffs, got another meeting with now the new Trump administration head of ICE. And honestly, it did not go well. We went in and it got pretty heated. I know I got pretty heated. We made a couple, well, not demands, but one demand was, one of the local administrators of ICE in our area needed to go. Because he had brought DC politics to Utah. He was not truthful. He was not ethical in the way he was doing things. And we're like, it's not.
So he was a deep stater.
Yeah, it's like this isn't how we do business in Utah. If you want local law enforcement to work with you, we've got to be able to trust you, and you've destroyed that with us. You need to get him out. And they didn't take that well. It went bad, and me and one of their administrators got into a big argument over it. And I'm like, listen, I get it. I wouldn't want somebody coming into my office saying, you got to get rid of this deputy. But let me tell you something. I'm not some person that got pulled over on a traffic stop and I'm mad because I got a ticket and I want somebody fired. You've got elected sheriffs sitting in front of you. You've got legislators from the state of Utah. You've got the governor from the state of Utah, because we all signed a letter and together and sent it to Chrissy Nome and said, this is a real problem. This needs to be fixed. And it really went nowhere that day. And again, on the standards issue, it went nowhere. And the meeting, we walked out, and I was with one of our congressional aides, and I'm like, did I go too far? And he's like, no, you know what, Sheriff? I guarantee you that guy's never been talked to the way you just talked to him. It needed to happen.
It's the benefit of being an elected official again and not someone that's appointed, right? You can get away with that.
So that night, we're at dinner, phone rings. It's the White House. They're like, hey, can you guys come to the White House in the morning? We want to meet. And we're like, oh, sure. I guess we just got called to the principal's office. So we show up at the White House in the morning, and we're meeting with one of President Trump's advisors. And he leads with, so we know what happened in the ICE office last night. We'd like to hear your side of the story. So we laid it out again. This is where we're at. These are the things we need to happen in the state of Utah because we want to work with you. We want to help, but you've got to give us an avenue. And it was awesome. He's like, you know what? It's going to happen. The guy you're worried about, he's gone. Don't worry about it.
That's
He's gone.
amazing.
Yeah, he's gone. And all of a sudden, these ICE standards that were like impassable, insurmountable, we'll never get around them, we're going to fix it. We're going to fix it. Don't you worry. We're going to fix it. So now there's an avenue that we can work through the U.S. Marshal's office to hold these inmates, these ICE holds under the U.S. Marshal Office standards. So that avenue has been opened up, and believe it or not, ICE is redoing their standards to make it so it's possible for jails to hold. And that didn't just benefit Utah, that benefited the nation. And, when I said earlier that, local politicians, and I still am discouraged about this when they jump on this, because local politicians jumped on this bandwagon and started to use it as, their campaign strategy. And it's like, well, you guys really don't know what you're doing. And the narrative you're using isn't the real narrative. It's not the truth. Local law enforcement in the state of Utah want to work and help ICE accomplish this, but there's things in place that will hurt our citizens if we do. And the sheriff's got it fixed. We got it fixed. We got it changed. And that's getting back to, why did it wait until, 10 months ago for me to enter into this contract? Because all of those things need to happen first. They needed to be fixed before we could do it.
Did that fix things statewide?
Yes, they did. It did. Fix things statewide. That
How
avenue.
many other counties were affected by that?
Were affected?
Do you know if there was other
the
counties
those-
that
yeah.
went into MOUs with you when those changes did?
Yes. So yeah. And I probably can't name them all right now, but several counties
Weber
have.
was one. I know that for sure.
Weber was one.
Washington County. So there's three different models. There's what's called a jail model. There's a task force model, and there's a warrant officer model, all under the 287G MOU contracts that you can participate with ICE. So you could do all three. You can do one. You can do two. I'm doing two of those models in Utah County. One of them is the task force model. That's probably the most controversial, actually. So if you can cause controversy for yourself, I'm like, why not? And I'll cause it. So
Is that where they're essentially deputizing you?
yeah. So this is where, if you watch, there's recently, I should say them because it's a hack piece beyond belief that one of our local media just did on these 287Gs.
How unusual.
And
Which local media would we call them out on this podcast?
it's KSL.
It's KSL. We thought so.
Yeah. And it's a total hack job. They're like, well, they refused to comment. Well, yeah, we did. Because for one, I've seen the work that you do, and you don't tell the true story. So why do I want to waste my time if you're not going to do ethical journalism? And you don't care what the narrative is. I mean, in the article, for instance, they go back to this July meeting when I first had the contract, and they pull a quote from me there, and then they say, well, he didn't answer any of these questions in May of this year. And it's like, well, you went back to July, and if you're being ethical, you'll see I answered every one of those questions for the people. Here's the reality. It doesn't fit their agenda, and they don't care. Yep. And they sit right behind me, calling me a liar, heckling me the whole time about what I'm doing. And even in this meeting, they come up with comments, well, you're doing this, you're doing that. And it's like,
Which is crazy because at the end of the day, it's just giving you the opportunity to have control and have options within law enforcement, especially when it comes to immigration.
Yeah, so
gives you the options.
Here's the reality, and I'll tell you straight out, this is what's happening in Utah County. So not all of my deputies are deputized as ICE agents under 287G. There's just a handful of them, and they are my task force officers. They are my officers who are out working high-level crime. These are the guys that are going after the drug cartels. These are the guys that are taking down people bringing in arms or firearms, whatever. That's who they target. And lo and behold, many times as we look into this, I know this is hard to believe, illegal immigrants are involved in this type of activity.
Well, it's not very hard to believe for us. But I mean, the public may find that hard to believe, but we don't find that hard to believe at all.
So it makes complete sense for me, and I would hope anybody that wants to have an honest, rational thought process, it would make complete sense to them that why, if these people are running drugs, guns, sex, whatever it may be in our communities, why do we want them in our communities? And it's like I said, I will make zero excuses for that. You can run your crap media piece on me and make me look bad. Fine. Utah County, we are going to fight evil in Utah County, and this is how we're going to do it. And I will not make excuses to KSL or anyone else for that. And shame on them, shame on the media. When we talk about, these poor people, they're scared. Well, why are they scared? The media. The media are the ones that are constantly scaring them with their boogeyman stories. Yep. And it's pitiful and it's shameful that they do this, but they do it over and over again. So I'll say it again, shame on you, media. You're disgusting. So anyway, we target these high-level crimes, and I'll give you some horror stories. This is why it's so important to me. We have one come through, it's probably been a year or so ago. We take down a load coming through, a load of narcotics, and there's 3 people involved. We identify them. They're members of Tren de Agua, Venezuelan gang, and so we put them in on felony charges. A local judge, anytime we get drugs and firearms together, we're going to seek a federal indictment. We do every single time, and the reality is because Utah laws are weak on that. They're very weak. If we can get a federal indictment on them, they're going to do some time, and they're going to be out of our community for a while. So we book them into my jail, into Utah County Jail. And our guys are very fast at getting these indictments in place. And the U.S. Attorney's Office is very fast working with us on it. In fact, we have, through our Utah County Attorney's Office, we have deputized U.S. attorneys through Jeff Gray's office that do this for us. So this is what they do. This is their full-time job. Before we can even get an indictment in place, a local judge lets these guys out. They ordered their release on an unsecured bond, which means they're just let out for the most part. And we'll never see these guys again. They're gone.
What district
Until you
is
bust
that?
them again.
Where that's happening?
4th District.
4th District? Is that a state-appointed
Yep. That's state
judge? One of
court.
where our Utah
Another one we
Senate.
need to vote out.
Yeah.
appointed
Well, and
one
I'll
of
tell
those
you,
judges?
if you want to talk about judges a little bit later.
Well,
we
we've
can
talked to
about
a
that.
lot of judges that we need to
I got some
not
stories.
vote in.
We need
But,
those lists for November.
But anyway, so I give you that story to show the importance of us entering into this 287G contract. So with my task force officers that are deputized now as ICE agents, they can place a civil hold on these people. So if a state judge in 4th District can say, let them out on criminal charges, well, we just placed a civil hold on them. We're holding them. We'll hold them on that civil hold, and they're not going anywhere. So these are the things that we're doing in Utah County through these contracts to
You
keep.
can bypass the judge because you have that MOU with
Yep.
ICE and where they
Yep.
deputized you.
And here's the reality:
awesome.
is it is ICE's job to do that. But here's what we're dealing with: ICE is spread thin. They are spread thin. They're trying to build up their numbers, but when we have these blue cities that want to play games and act like our federal government doesn't have any authorization to enforce immigration laws, which is like, where are you getting that from? Because under your own administration, we've deported more people than Trump ever thought of doing at this point, right? Obama, we were doing the same job back then, and it was okay. But now all of a sudden, it's evil. And it's just,
Well, they need the electorate. They need the
yeah,
voters.
well, there's a very wise statement out there that says, good will be called evil and evil will be called good. And we're living in those days. We are living in those days. So, so we're doing this. We're placing these holds on them. We're trying to keep our community safe. This isn't some widespread, all of my deputies out, running traffic for pulling over soccer moms or checking immigration status. They don't have that capability. They're not part of this program. It is just my high level detectives that are doing this. And then I've also got a model in the jail. And I can tell you and I'll tell you, Davis County's doing this too because they have to. Utah, we've always done this. All of our jails have done this through all of this. Is if anybody comes into the jail, we will run them Of course, we have to know who we have in jail. If we find out that they don't have U.S. status, those names are sent to ICE. And if the jail wasn't doing it, in fact, a couple of years ago, the state of Utah ran a bill to make it law that you had to. I wasn't aware of any jail in the state of Utah that wasn't already doing it. Everybody was doing it. But so the jail would send the name in. And also when you run them through a BCI, the Bureau of Criminal Information Identification, they would send it to ICE as well. So those names were being sent to ICE. And I can just give you some rough numbers from Utah County. So in under the Biden administration, you know, on an average in Utah County, there was about, well, this is held pretty, it's held even into the Trump administration as I've ran 2025 compared to 2024. So we would get about 100 people booked into jail every month in Utah County jail that were illegal immigrants. And they're being booked in for committing a crime, right? Not for being illegal immigrants, but for committing a crime in the community. You know, local agency, whoever picked them up, DV, drugs, you name it, they're being booked into the jail. So we run those, we send those to ICE. Hey, we've got 100 people this month. Here they are. Under the Biden administration, on average, about 9 of those 100 they placed a hold on and came and got.
9 of the 100.
9 of the 100. Now, it was interesting as we entered, if you remember, I remember these things because I lived it and felt it, but in 2024, when we're going through the election process, right? All of a sudden, it became important, even to Democrats, that we secure that border. When the nation started clamoring, and it was very evident that we want our border secured, and this is a problem. Well, now even Democrats are starting to say, "Oh yeah, we're going to secure the border." So all of a sudden, we went from about 9 a month to about 20 a month out of that 100 that they started picking up.
Is it because they didn't have the means or the buses or the...
Some of it is. Some of it's that, and some of it is
just straight administration.
It's just straight administrative. There, it wasn't a big deal. But I'm glad you bring it up because that is a real concern, and that gets to the detention facility. But now under Trump, we're averaging of that same. My numbers have stayed about the same. It averages about 100 a month on crime charges. About 40 of those are being picked up a month under the Trump administration. So now
you'd wonder why it's not all 100 of them.
Well, this is why. Yeah. This is why it gets back to where you went. It's the detention facility. Yeah. Everything in our region, it's Utah. I'm probably going to say this wrong. Idaho, Wyoming. I think Montana might be in it too. They all go to Vegas.
Active.
All of them. So
I thought it was just Utah and Nevada. I didn't know there was that many states.
Yeah, they all go to Vegas, and so there's a limited number of beds down there. So there is a logistics issue. There's absolute logistics issue.
Do you know how quick the turnaround is from when they're detained there to where they're out? Like, why aren't we?
Well, I do. What I can tell you, this is what I know. It's a long process, right? And America has kind of made it that way. And the left is screaming no due process. Well, they're not right. They do get due process. Those deportation hearings, they take time. We get to the detention facility they want to build here in Utah. And I'm going to sit here, I'm going to tell you, I'm not really against that at all, but I do have some concerns. It is a lot of beds. And I'll tell you why I have concerns on it. One of the concerns is the sheriffs in the state of Utah have worked with ICE to try to get alternatives that we could get inmates back into our facilities. We're like, we want to help. Let's get them back in our facilities. I right now in my facility, I don't have hundreds of beds I can give them, but I can give them some. But we have identified facilities in Utah. Weber County has a soft close on one of their facilities that has, it's been a minute since I've talked this. I think it had 180 beds in it. Maybe it was just over 200 beds in it. That Sheriff Arbon's been working with them, trying to get them to come and use this. It's here. We've got a facility in Daggett County that's sitting vacant that ICE could use it.
There's no criminals in Daggett County.
Well, their jail was closed. It's got, I think it's closed. I'm forgetting my numbers. We were close to 400 beds between those two facilities. We were having the most, Daggett having some, that ICE could come in and use those facilities, and they've just shown no interest to do it. And then we went kind of radio silence for a minute with ICE, and the next thing we knew, the sheriffs didn't know, the state didn't know, and this detention center gets dropped, and it's like, well, what are you guys doing? So, and I'll just tell you, we need something like that, right? So we're all like, everybody's clamoring, not in our backyard, but at the same time, is it fair that it's all in Vegas's backyard, all of our problem? But here's to answer your question, here's what concerns me. Is I do know that when somebody is taken in, there is they have 180 days to complete this process. So if they don't complete the process, they just get released. And so if we have a detention center that is as big as they want to build in Salt Lake County,
process them fast enough.
Yeah, if they don't process them fast enough,
future administrations.
but you also know that all these other regions that don't have centers, they're going to bring them here. And then if they don't get processed fast enough, they're going to be kicked out that door into our communities, and they become our problem. So that's where my concern lies. And it's not that I don't have faith in the Trump administration. I believe they'll do everything in their power to get that process through, but I also know the left is doing everything in their power to stop Trump, right? Including federal judges that are trying to stop him on every aspect of this. And then who knows what the next administration is going to be. And if it's the wrong administration, then we're just...
I'm naive in this, but why can't you put the facility? I mean, we have so much land that there's nothing on. Why can't it go in the salt flats?
Well, I think that's probably some of the rub with local leaders. They're going, there was no really, there's no dialogue here. If it had to happen, let's have dialogue and let's see what works out best for everybody.
Just take that to
we need to get those ICE agents back on that had to postpone.
Well, John, I want to go over some of these things here. So there's a lot of articles like this one that mentions a little bit down Utah County. Pretty significant amount of fentanyl getting picked up, and you see article after article, and this is not the fentanyl guide, but federal indictment of Utah from Mexico bringing in fentanyl, another one $100.5 million worth of concentrated marijuana. So I mean, another person with 50 pounds of meth, 2 arrested there in Layton, her hometown Layton right here.
Yep.
Another one up here in Davis County, 30 counts of sexual exploitation of a minor within the school district. I'm assuming that fits within your guys' purview as well.
Yep.
I mean...
it's a lot of stuff. It's a lot of things going on.
There's a lot going on.
Yeah, so let me hit at this part on the, we'll start here on the narcotics. So the state of Utah has a really cool program. So last year, so I'm, again, Air Force Intelligence Officer of the National Guard. The state of Utah has a program. It's called the Counter Drug Program, where the National Guard actually has about 200 intelligence and linguist personnel that actually work full time to work counter drug operations with federal partners, but also with state partners to be able to combat drug trafficking. And so when I got offered to go out there for 2 months last fall, and I jumped on deck. So I'm like, what a great opportunity to see how they function, see how they work, and it's a phenomenal program. So essentially, what they do is they track narcotics internationally, where it's going, where it's coming from, the people that are involved, the gang members that are involved, the routes of travel, and they track all of these things. Then once it gets to our border, they pass that information on to the federal and state law enforcement. And so that way we can track when it hits the border, where it's going, where it's being distributed, how we can track it, how we can find it. And you're right. So the past 18 months, Davis County Metro Narcotics Strike Force here in Davis County, in our county, they've seized over 60 pounds of powder fentanyl. And it's, you have to do a little bit of research with powder fentanyl. So 60 pounds of powder fentanyl can kill over 4 times the population of the state of Utah in 18 months. And that's how much just the Narcotics Strike Force, and again, just powder fentanyl. That doesn't include pill form. That doesn't include anything else. And so it is still very much coming through and a huge problem within our society. Another issue with this is because it's such a rapid, because the trafficking is happening so much more around the Salt Lake region specifically, it's a huge hub. And so folks will come down actually from,
I-15, I-80, right?
yeah, and so folks will actually come down from other states into Utah to buy it because they get it for significantly cheaper. They can spend $5-6 for a pill of fentanyl versus maybe it's 10 or 15 if you go up to Wyoming or Montana, because it's so much more prolific here in our area. And so we're also bringing in people from out of state that we don't want to be around here. But again, it's very much an issue, and of course the people that are running those are 9 times out of 10 gang members. Whether it's the Sinaloa cartel, whether it's Trinidad Agua, it's a huge problem. And I don't think most people realize how bad it is, because again, with drugs, with gangs comes violence, comes guns, comes sex trafficking, and everything else with it.
So what can you do? I mean, obviously the current sheriff is retiring.
Yeah.
You're up for election. You're fighting against Perry. You're fighting against others.
Yep, just it.
What would make you stand out that would solve a lot of these problems?
Yeah, I think a lot of it's we shouldn't approach things, in my view, as a one size fits all. I shouldn't go in there and say, yeah, I have all the answers. What we should be doing, which I haven't seen by and large, is going to have the communication with the commander of these organizations, specifically with the Davis Narcotic Strike Force, and have those conversations. What can we do to be able to improve this? How can we help support this program? Because sometimes I've gone through this element and through this campaign and go through local, state, government, and had conversations, it seems like everyone's kind of doing their own sort of thing. And a lot of the guys that are doing the work, guys and gals doing the work every day, aren't being listened to. It feels like sometimes things get too politicized, we get too much of a bloated bureaucracy, and we get away from actually solving the problems and giving credence to the problems. And so that is definitely something that's on my mind, is getting down to the root to make sure we're talking and having those communications with the folks doing and fighting against these terrible crimes, and having the questions and answers of, what is it you guys need? How can we make this better? And then it's my duty to go in front of the public and say, this is a legitimate issue, and this is what we need to be able to get after this problem. Same thing with sex trafficking. I know we had a conversation before, and Mike even mentioned it with releasing it with the judges. When I was working in criminal investigations, guy comes up from Utah County to have sex with a 14-year-old girl, brought meth with him in Farmington, and thankfully that was not a 14-year-old girl. It was undercover, and we busted him. 12 hours later, the judge kicks him loose, promised to appear. And we know specifically when we have folks that are sexually raping and molesting kids, it's usually not just one. It's a lot of times it's target of opportunity. And so you just released a predator out there, and that's probably doing the same. 2 weeks go by, the promise to appear comes and goes, and of course it goes to a warrant, because he's not going to come back. He's going to try to avoid it at all costs. And so I know that's a roundabout way, but it comes back to being in tune with the community and being in tune with the problems. And the one thing that separates me from my competitor is I've been in Davis County doing law enforcement the past 9 years. He hasn't.
Well, the public needs to know about this, right? Because they don't know. They think you guys are doing your job. You're getting people arrested. They don't understand how bad the judge problem is. It's really putting people back out on the streets. And unless we have conversations with law enforcement, you're free to speak your mind, right? You're not curtailed by a mayor. You're not curtailed by the governor. You're free to speak your mind. Unless the public really hears about this, they don't understand how severe the problems are. I mean, they hear about Prop 4. They hear about the abortion problem, with the abortion law still not going through the Utah Supreme Court. And they hear about the big stuff, but this is pretty major when you have judges down in Utah County, Salt Lake County. All these are appointed judges by a conservative state that's just letting everybody go.
Yeah, and I go back to leading into the problem. I feel like too often we're just, again, reactionary. It's like, okay, what can we do to be more proactive to deal with these problems? And what is it that's preventing us from actually dealing with the problems and holding people accountable, but also protecting the society by keeping criminals that are victimizing people that are keeping them incarcerated? And some of the things that I've kind of deduced and gone through this process is I feel, one, we have folks that are within leadership positions, sometimes in law enforcement, that maybe want to take the stoic route and they want to be the quiet professional, but it's like, no, if we're really going to do justice for the people we represent, we need to make sure they know so that they can help provide the pressure in the direction we need the pressure to be presented. And I think too often we don't have that, but also we have folks that are in the game that they just like to be a bystander, and they like to collect the money, and they like to just be reactionary, and, we're dealing with it, and, it's okay.
This is where the Utah Senate, the governor, and law enforcement meet, right, is the appointment of judges, because you guys cannot do your job unless we got good judges in place. If they're just putting them back out in the community,
Yeah.
I mean, you just put all this effort into it. Taxpayer dollars went to it. Salaries went to it. Whole bunch of law enforcement hours went to that, and for what? Nothing.
And you need tenacious leaders that are willing to go to DC, willing to go to the
in
the
the Utah
Capitol.
Senate that are actually appointing conservative judges.
Well,
have better appointments.
With that, I'm not going to stand up for them, but I will tell you this on that process, and I think I have a fairly good understanding of it. There's a committee that goes through those names first. They only get a few names.
So
and when they get a few names that they're all
oh, crap.
That's all they get to choose from. So I'll throw them that, but I will tell you
that entire process needs to get changed because we discussed that specifically last week.
Here is what, and you probably discussed this too, but here's what I think is the most un-American about the whole process: a retention election, right? So these judges go up on a retention election. We see their names on our ballots, and you're going,
who is it? Who is
We
it?
get the phone calls and the texts. What do you think about Judge so-and-so?
So, and there are things in place. I mean, I've squawked about this for forever. I've squawked. I've tried to get lawmaker after lawmaker to run I want a bill that basically creates a scorecard for judges, right? So, so
we're working on it right now. Actually,
well,
they don't have enough people voting on it though.
They don't, and they fall flat on their face. I know there's been a couple weak attempts to get them through that weren't as strong as what I would want. But I've squawked long enough that I actually did get thrown on. There is a committee. It's called JPEC, the Judicial Performance Executive Committee. I got thrown on that, and we evaluate judges. And that's been this has been my first year on it, and it's been a very interesting process. And I will tell you, the people that are on that are very. I've been surprised that I went in, with the way I thought it would be, and the people on there really do want to make sure good judges are in place. But the problem that just not getting in the weeds on it, but some of the things that are important to me, like that I think are important to, because being the sheriff, you have the voice of the people and the ear of the people, and I'm like, I think people want to know, or would think it's important to know, if there's a single judge that has a propensity to let sex offenders out without bail, or and there is a pattern there. I think people would want to know that. Well, those aren't things that can even be considered through this process. And so when I'm talking about a scorecard, I'm like, I think that's the things people want to know.
So what are they entertaining in the scorecard then?
It's professional. It's really professional level of their competence in court on certain categories, but all on a professional level. And you can't bring in any of the rulings at all.
Well, that's stupid. If I can see everything that my legislators are doing, every vote they do, why can't I see everything the judges are doing?
Well,
And I know Carrie Ann Lisby is trying to put forth a bill that literally puts that on the ballot, where you can see exactly how they judge. But it's
even
struggling
as sheriff,
to get through.
Every 4 years, I've got to go stand in front of the people and convince them that I've been doing the job they put me in office to do, right? And I'm at their mercy to be reelected. And they get to know, it's very transparent. They can see what's been going on in the sheriff's office. And, why I don't understand why our courts are so guarded. It just...
Because the left wants them to be guarded, because that's how they keep...
Well, I think part of it goes also to, this is my perception, it's that mentality of, we're the experts, we know better. We're going to do what we think is best.
Know more than you do.
Versus the avenue of, again, let me explain why we do this, so you can kind of understand why we got here, so you can make an educated decision. I think it comes to that fact.
And that's the biggest thing. That's why I think the scorecard's important, because what it does result in, and you guys have probably heard this, and maybe you even say the same thing, just vote no on all of them.
Yep, that's what we're saying to everybody.
Okay, but here's the problem, and I'm not saying you're saying the wrong thing, but there are some good judges out there, and we don't want to get rid of them. We want to retain them, because we do have some good, conservative, ethical people sitting on those benches that we need to protect. And so there needs to be transparency so that we can protect them and get rid of the ones that shouldn't be on the bench.
I would completely agree with that. We had the big conversation last week because Braden Hess is running up against Stuart Adams. We're pushing to get Braden Hess in there as much as possible because he affects the entire state, right? The president of the Senate affects the entire state as much as the whole state wouldn't like to think that way, but president of the Senate's got a pretty large amount of power to put forth what he wants to out there and see what bills that he wants to have done see the light of day, right? Or else he can just start killing bills. We had this whole conversation about him killing bills, but it's the Senate's job to appoint these judges.
Yep.
And we've had a prolific amount of very, very liberal judges being appointed over the last 10 years, all on Stuart Adams' watch. And our system of appointing judges is terrible because we discussed that as well. It's not like the federal system where the president can literally just pick whoever he wants to, right? Doesn't matter who it is. No, in this state, there's a certain group of unelected officials in the state bar, nonetheless,
That say you can look at these people and that's it.
that put forth the nominees out there. No one else can do anything about it.
Yeah, which is crazy. You think that it'd be elected officials representing the people in a conglomerate of maybe representatives, senators.
You got liberal people from a state bar that have come from liberal Ivy League universities saying this is who we're going to put in this conservative state, right?
I've got a judge right now, just to give you, just on a different level, that so when a detective is trying to get a search warrant for something or an arrest warrant or whatever it may be, so you take my special victims unit, they've worked up a case, they've got somebody that's downloading CSAM, child porn, and they're ready to go serve a warrant on the house to get this individual who's and most times, I think you'll back me on this, when we find that they've been downloading these images, it connects right in with they perpetrated as well, and then we open up those cases. But I've got a judge right now that when they take turns being the judge that you go to get your warrant signed, right? He will deny it doesn't matter what the warrant's for child porn, child molestation, drugs, whatever. They just get denied. He won't sign them. So, my deputies, it's not just my deputies, it's officers across the county are like, what are we supposed to do? We don't know what to tell you because, they won't listen to us. Wait until next week when a different judge is on call, send it back in, and they get signed. They haven't changed anything in the warrant. It's not like the judge is saying, hey, if there's a problem right here, if we could change that, I'll sign it.
Which has traditionally been the case. Typically, when they kick it back, they say, hey, you need to add some more PC, probable cause, within this area, or add a little more information or clarifying information. Yeah. So
have you run? You were on that unit, right? Special victims type of a unit.
Yeah. So I started in fraud and then also financial crimes, and then I went into person crimes, which was sexual abuse, and I worked closely with side partner.
What are some of your personal experiences with that and fighting judges?
Yeah. So we actually had. When I was over there about 4 years ago, we really didn't have much issues with the judges denying that I saw for the warrants in those locations. And when I was on the SWAT team, we've served a couple as well out in West Point for CSAM as well. And that was a house full of people here illegally. Like there's so many nasty things that happen. But I haven't personally had an issue with that. Usually my case, whenever I've dealt with in the past, was denied. And then again, we need some more information here. And like, oh, okay, thanks for the guidance, judge. Or they call you and then you fill out the rest.
So how pervasive is some of those sex crimes in Davis County right now?
Yeah, every single time we're putting the hook in the water, we're pulling them out. And that's one of the things that, by and large, is kind of a proactive approach. So there are things sometimes they'll come in. They do come in regularly where people are reporting it. But the proactive is fantastic because a lot of times when we go out there, we have undercover units and agents and officers that they get in these chat rooms, getting these groups. And like Sheriff Mike Smith said, we have a very similar where these guys will come and they'll bring their kids and they'll do like a kid swap. And so they'll rape each other's kids.
That's absolutely disgusting that happens.
And I worked a couple of cases. We worked a couple of kidnap cases too, where me and my partner went to a hotel in the Bountiful area, and a 14-year-old boy that was kidnapped. 12 hours later, we found him in a hotel with 3 grown men, and like that stuff happens. And kidnap cases where kids are picked up. Yeah, and kids are picked up from their house at 4:00 in the morning. We find them 3 states over because they were befriended on video games, and they were groomed, and then they ended up leaving with the suspect and with the assaulter.
The Trump administration right now is saying that just across the board, not even counting our local kidnapping and all this type of stuff, that about 300 100,000 kids came across the border and are just missing, just gone. And they said they found about 126,000 of those. What have you found? Have you found any of those?
As far as the kids know,
Children?
most of the kids that we deal with are the kids that are within
Homegrown
homes.
kids?
Yeah, homegrown, and they're targeted through either, again, on video games is usually where they're groomed. And then, again, we lure in the suspects and then a lot of times when we set these sting operations and we arrest them, of course, it metastasizes like, oh, yeah, they've got 50,000 images on their phone of child sexual imagery, and as well as them raping other kids. And so it's not just one of those things that they're just targeting once. It's like, no, we're finding them. They're committing the crime they've agreed to, but then we find all the other things they've been involved with as well. And these guys are nasty. Any 9 times out of 10, probably 99% of the time when you arrest them, they have huge troves of these images and videos. Like
How does
they
an
don't get
officer
rid of them.
deal with that?
It's hard because we have to legitimately go through them, because every single one we go through it as well to find new victims. And so we go through those imageries and those videos to say, okay, that's a new face, that's a new person. Now we got to try to identify who they are. But as well as each one of those is additional charge or criminal offense. So sometimes it becomes, like I said, it metastasizes into a lot bigger problem, a lot more victims that we got to try to figure out. Because
Emotionally, how do you deal with
Yeah,
that?
it's
Because
hard.
myself,
Yeah.
I'd be
and that's one thing,
seeing
man.
kids like that.
Yeah.
I'd
To
be,
erase my
It's
brain.
hard. And there's so many. I'll tell you, I don't know how much.
it'd be hard for me not want to just put a bullet in
Yeah,
their
and
head.
how much Mike's dealt with or seen, but a lot of these investigators, you have to pay so close attention. My partner, his career spiraled out of control, and he ended up losing his job, and he's not law enforcement anymore. But you
Just
got
because you get too aggressive or too...
no, it just affects every aspect of your
So
life.
here's the
Affects every
reality.
aspect of your life.
People think that, I don't know what people think, but I don't think people realize how
Emotionally damaging that would be.
just how corruptive that lifestyle is, to the point where, we're putting good, honorable men and women who have taken an oath to protect their communities. We're putting them into these positions that they're exposed to this evil that is so corrosive. It is just evil at its very worst, and we're putting them in positions where they're dealing with this evil, and these images that they get in positions where they have to be verified. We try to do everything we can that there's known images and they're verified, but it comes to a point where you got to be like, okay, yep, child porn, and it pays a toll on these good men and women that have honorable intentions to do this job. It damages them. And, when I came in as sheriff in Utah County, I was surprised because there was a EAP in place, that you get through your healthcare provider, that you could go to for mental health. But it was just like if you thought you needed it. As a chief of police, we had far more in place than this. And so I was kind of shocked with the sheriff's office. And these EAP providers, they're not equipped to take care of. I mean, I would send deputies to EAP, and they would end up consoling the therapist. The therapist would be in tears. They damaged their therapist. So we've hired a group that this is what they specialize in. And so all of my deputies have to do once a year. They have a check-in they have to do with a therapist. And then my sex crimes detectives, it's quarterly, and it's with a specialized, and it's expensive, but it's a specialized therapist that they have to go to so we can make sure that they're doing okay, because this work we're asking them to do, which is so important, we've got to combat this. We have to.
Can't just let it go.
It's damaging to these people. You'll hear horror stories across the nation of, how it's, led to, discipline, loss of job, loss of life through suicide. I mean, it really messes with people. And then in the world, it just goes unchecked. And we wonder how our world could become so evil. Well, this evil is off the charts.
And it's in Utah, Happy Valley, Utah. Right? Happy Valley. I mean, during the debate, we had a sheriff's debate a couple months ago.
Yeah.
One of the main questions I asked of all four of you that are running is, how does an officer, sheriff, separate criminals from the regular people, because when you're out there dealing with this type of crap, and then you do just a normal traffic stop, right? You tend to get this, treat everybody like a criminal, treat everybody horribly, and then that creates a bad image on law enforcement, right? Where you've got people they just don't stop treating people well because they just see so much crap during the day that they treat everybody the same.
Yeah.
So as a sheriff, how do you help your officers differentiate that? Now, you got to treat people with respect, treat people kindly, but also recognize when you're in danger, when there's a problem, when you need to be a little more aggressive.
I think one of the things that, as I've gone through and with age and with time, I feel that one thing that's not talked about enough is emotional intelligence for the individuals. To be self-aware of the things that you need to be within yourself, to be able to know, okay, I'm not good here, or I need help here, or that was a rough one, so I need to ask, hey, can I have a half hour? I think that too often we just like, okay, you know what? We're just going to keep going. And then family members or friends are like, are you okay? Are you okay? Then you get mad because, you're like, yes, I'm okay, but you keep asking me. I think that we need to be able to start looking at that as well within that aspect, to be able to get to know ourselves as well a little bit better so we can appropriately address those. Because look, the vast majority of folks that get in law enforcement, we get into it because we want to find the bad guys. We understand there's a job to do at the end of the day, even with normal citizens, but that's not our focus. We want to be able to have the opportunity and the resources and support to find the bad guy. And that is very much liberating in many ways. But I think, again, going back to it, we need to be able to feel that we have confidence and have the resource and support from our administration to be able to deal with these. But also know where our limits are, and also have those good relationships so people can say, yeah, they're struggling. We need to be able to have an avenue to send them to TAP or send them to go get help, or have an avenue of, okay, take the next couple of days off because you're not good here. If you're not good personally, you're not going to be good on the job. And I think that's a concern.
Law enforcement gets bad enough rap as it is, right?
Yeah.
When you have officers that are treating every citizen like crap, that's what they see, right? They don't see that officer just saw what he saw and what he's just not there.
Yeah, and we've all had those calls, and I've had those. I remember when we were running as a paramedic deputy, and I'd be going back to back, and to death, to emergency medical issues, to DVs. And I remember one night it was 4 or 5 hours straight, and finally I could get some food. I go to McDonald's to get food, and
That's not
the person. Well, I was trying to eat something, and I opened up the bag, and it's full of like pieces of bacon. So I'm like, okay, I can't eat this food and throw it away because bacon, pig. And so things like that happen. It's like, man, that was a rough 5 hours, and now I got that. Like that's, and trying to deal with that the emotional aspects. Like, man, like it's been a rough 6 hours, and now I just got, now I still can't eat.
Well, you go from murder to child sex trafficking, all this kind of stuff, and then you got
It builds.
somebody that's just going 12 miles an hour, 13 miles an hour with the speed limit. You're pulling over. You're trying not to.
Mm-hmm. It takes a lot because there's a
Blow
lot of
up
those
on
peaks and
that
valleys.
person, right?
There's a lot of peaks and valleys, and it just takes time, and it takes good control and maturity. But
Well, it's the God part of God and country.
Yeah.
I just think it's so important for each person to have time where they're constantly strengthening their relationship with whoever their higher being is.
Yeah.
But I think you have to spend time with God and have faith that he can help.
Well, one of the things that I love about on the military is we focus on the 4 pillars. So mental health, physical health, spiritual health, and social. And like that's very much so the case. I think if we kind of try to work on those, it's fantastic. We used to have a chaplain program in the sheriff's office, and I thought it was great. We don't anymore, but I don't know the reason behind that. But I like having options. So people, if they want to go to a clergy member, if they want to go to a mental health, they have options to be able to go what feels right for them.
I agree. I think you have to have options. As we've looked at this, trying to put together the best mental health program we can. And if I go somewhere to a training and there's a class on mental health, I'm going to that one because I want to hear what people are doing. And the reality is there is no magical, oh, this is it. And even a few years ago, the state put aside some money, which was very much appreciated. The legislature did, that helped agencies get officer wellness programs in place. And it was interesting. A couple of years later, they did an audit on it, and they wanted to know what helped. How can we refine this? And for me, it's like I don't think you can refine it because it goes back to what you just said. Everybody's different. You've got kind of the guy that's been in law enforcement 32 years, the way we dealt with it was rub some dirt on it and get it back out to work. That's just what you did. You know, you didn't go talk to a therapist. That was weakness. That was not something that happened. And so you've got this older group that they're like, I'm not going to go talk to a therapist. The younger crowd, I see them, the newer officers, they're more accepting of that. So you got to have options. We have that. We have our peer support programs. We've got a system that will do nothing else, but it goes to data mines in our system, and it'll say, hey, John, we can see that John's been on 4 very high stress calls in the last 2 days. And so it'll send out a message. Hey, how you doing? You feeling all right? And it also will ping peer support. Maybe we ought to check on John, make sure he's doing okay. So it's being aware of our employees, and then it's teaching our employees to, be aware of themselves, right? And to know when you're feeling that way. Maybe don't make that traffic stop on somebody when it's like,
Yeah, it's okay to let it go.
I want to rip someone's head off. I probably shouldn't stop this soccer mom for doing 10 over the speed limit.
Yeah, let him go. but Mike's right. Like for me, I love it's not even the real legit peer support. Where I get is like going to hang out with my buddy. Like we go and we'll have a barbecue at his house and sit around the fire and chat. Like that's where I get mine. That in church, and that's my fantastic avenue that I feel rejuvenate and helps me with my restart.
One of the hardest things for all law enforcement officers go through is death of a fellow officer, right? We look up at Tremont here. A couple officers go to a call, just another call, all of a sudden 2 of them are dead, dog shot, third one's wounded. I'm sure everybody faces that. Let's start with you and go to you.
Yeah.
Have you had that happen to you where you've known somebody that's gone through that, passed away, and how do officers deal with that?
Thankfully, we haven't had that at ours. We've had somewhere a couple of years ago, a couple of deputies, they were on a motorcycle right off duty and crashed, and unfortunately, they both died several years ago. So that's hard, but it's the element of getting attacked and killed in the line of duty. That's hard to deal with and to process. I couldn't even imagine the folks that are at that department. Like I haven't had to deal with that, and knock on wood, and hopefully I never have to. But I don't know what the answer is for you, because I couldn't imagine being in that situation. I think one of the things that I saw that was wonderful in the state of Utah is everybody reached out to them to try to figure out whatever they could do to be able to support them. Back in the 11th of May, I was able to go out to DC for Police Week, and that whole week is centered around focusing on the law enforcement officers that were killed in line of duty the previous year. And went up there, and they were both the officers were recognized in DC. But it's really very much a somber moment to be able to go through that and to experience that.
Well, hopefully most of the public treat law enforcement a little similar to we treat our military, right? Because military, we give the military a lot of accolades.
Yeah.
And military, we really give that deep appreciation for our military people, but it doesn't always translate to law enforcement.
Yeah.
And it should.
Yeah. And on my military side, like I've dealt with some stuff, but the law enforcement and EMS, it's the back-to-back. It's the heavy load back-to-back-to-back, infinite, not stopping.
Have you had loss on your military side at all?
Yeah, for suicides and other accidents, but thankfully no one close to me in the line of duty.
All right. Mike, what if...
Yeah, so throughout my career, there's far too many funerals that I've attended for fallen officers. Utah County, we've had some. The sheriff's office, before I was a sheriff, but I was chief of police, and I was a commander on the SWAT team, and one of our sergeants on the SWAT team made actually it was he pulled over to assist a stranded motorist, is what he thought. A car off the side of the road, pulled over to assist, and went up, checked on him, went back to his car. The male driver opened up the rear slider of the pickup truck and fired rounds into the windshield of the deputy's car and killed him.
Good.
He then took off, led a chase across the county, ended up on the south side of the county, where another deputy that I worked with on the SWAT team, and I responded to this location, he got onto the car. He thought he had the right car, and the guy again shot from the rear sliding window as they were driving down the road, put rounds through his windshield and hit that deputy in the head. And that deputy survived that shooting. It was a long road back for him, but he's back on duty now.
It's got to be an incredibly long road back. You got shot in the head.
Yeah. But yeah, far too many, and it takes a toll. It is tough on an organization, and the same with, we've suffered suicides, and again, that's why the mental health piece is so important to me. There's enough bad guys out in the world that want to hurt us. We need to figure out how we can be better at helping our employees not hurt themselves when everything just feels too heavy for them.
We've done a considerable number of podcasts specifically around suicide because it's such a big issue. We've done a lot with military suicides because our veterans are, sadly, there's between 19 and 22 veteran deaths a day from veteran suicides across the country. Law enforcement is there. We did one with Warrior Risen Ranch where they bring in a lot of military, a lot of law enforcement in to kind of help that out. There's a lot of other big programs out there for suicide victims, but it's a serious issue and devastating issue because look what they go through. And people don't see what they go through, the violence, the cruelty, the man's inhumanity to the man, particularly with kids. I don't know how you deal with being on a task force where you're dealing with anything with kids, where kids are being abused and not be emotionally distraught by the end of the day.
They're not a question. It takes a toll.
Yeah.
Yeah, because I'd be killing people by the
Yeah,
end of the day.
it takes a special work, and it's really there's been, I can't tell you the number of kids I've gone on as a paramedic and that have died, but it's almost one of those task oriented. We have to be focused on detached. This isn't my emergency, and I've got a job to do. But of course, that doesn't mean it's going to slam it all together after you finish that call. It's going to hit like a ton of bricks, like it usually does. But yeah, it's a challenge.
Right here it says human trafficking in Utah happens daily and local police are under-equipped, investigators say. And this is recent here in 2024, Daily Herald down in Utah County neck of the woods. Kind of goes on here. There was a time here in Utah where there was belief that there was no human trafficking. That has since come and gone. We've arrested and investigated many, many, many people for human trafficking, whether that's sex trafficking or labor trafficking, he told lawmakers. So kind of in line with what we've been talking here. But going back to our point here, how are law enforcement equipped, and what can we do to equip them? We talked about mental health, we talked about this, but what do you think is probably the biggest thing that we need to do to equip law enforcement? And then we'll go.
Yeah, honestly, it's resources. It's the things people don't want to talk about. All of this type of investigation and the equipment that goes along with it, it costs money. It's the big, ugly, dirty word tax. That money's got to come from somewhere.
And county commissioners are trying to do what they can to get you guys equipped, but then their budgets only go so far before you're getting yelled and screamed at for a 15 or 30% property tax increase, right?
Yeah. So a couple years ago, we had a tax increase, and of course, I don't want my taxes to go up. I'm the same as anybody else, but I have an inside view of what's going on, and when my sex crimes unit has hit the point where we are now completely reactive, everything that we're doing is we're just reacting to people that have now kids that have now been sexually abused, and we're investigating that, and I have no bandwidth anymore to go out and do proactive sex crimes investigations because this is taking up all my time. Then I've got to go back to the commission and say, I need more deputies. The problem is here. We've got to address it. I need more deputies, and that money's got to come from somewhere. And I've told, as we've had our truth and taxation meetings, I hate taxes. I hate them. But I'm like, you elected me to be your sheriff, to keep this county safe. I'm here telling you this is what I need.
And it's why we need to quit misspending taxpayer money.
I agree.
So it can
I
be
agree.
what needs to
And
be.
I don't.
Veterinary.
Yeah,
Avoid
as,
the
as a
optional.
sheriff, we don't have control over
Right.
over where the rest of
One
that
thing the
budget
commissioners
is.
do controls the purse strings.
Yeah, what I can control is what's being used in the sheriff's office, and I can stand in front of my citizens and say, I am using it wisely to fight crime in this community, to keep our community safe, and I need these things to do it. And so, yeah, I don't disagree with that statement you read. It, the resources are where it's at. We need more people. We need better resources. It's an expensive thing, to do a sting like we're talking about, to, where we're taking down some of these people. Those usually, they go on for a while, and they're expensive operations. A lot of times we go out to third parties, and they give us donations. We'll have companies that'll give us thousands and thousands of dollars to cover the operation, so that we can afford to pay the overtime and everything else involved in running one of these stings. It's an expensive business, but it's something that I believe, as a citizen, I believe it is money well spent to keep our community safe, to keep our kids safe. I will, if this is what, I'm with you, as long as it's spent wisely. If this is what it's going to,
Well, that's why it trickles down to the voter, because we need to be electing commissioners who know how to budget wisely and put the money where it needs to be. And we need, for me, the delegate system where you are electing good delegates who will delve into these things and find out so they can elect the right people.
Yeah.
I'll mention this. This is one of my pet peeves, right? Because it happens almost every single time. Is you'll get somebody, especially through the delegate, and I go through the system too, but it's just no on taxes, no on this, no on that, and you're like, whoa, wait a minute, what are you talking about? It goes back. I started with this. I'm not a politician. I'm going to tell you the way it is. And I've sat with some of these people, and the ones that'll double down, I really have a hard time with. But some of them, when you pull them back a minute, I'm like, okay, so you're making all these campaign promises. What if I come to you as sheriff and say, the crime is out of control. We need to do something to get this back into control. Sex crimes are going off the chart. I need more deputies here. And there is no money in the budget to do it. Are you telling me that you are so staunch over here that you're not willing to do what's right for your community and say, okay, we're going to have to do something here so that we can hire some more deputies? Oh no, Sheriff, I'd do it for that. Well, then quit lying to the people and tell them, you know what? I have enough backbone that under certain circumstances, if it makes sense and I cannot find waste anywhere else, and I've got to say, hey, we've got to go to the people because we got to address this problem, that you wouldn't do that. How is it so hard to stand in front of people and say that? And if they don't want to elect you for that, then oh well, I'll do something.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's one of the key points as I've seen is going back to, are we looking internally to find ways? Is there ways that we can work internally? Is there ways we can work as a cooperative with other agencies to be able to mitigate costs and to be able to help each other out and avoid duplicated efforts? But then, yeah, at some point that's gonna come knocking. But one thing that I've talked about before was specifically with sexual crimes. We know, especially with men, when men are sexually abused, they're a higher proponent to sexually abuse. And with sexual abuse comes mental health problems. They come substance abuse for the coping aspect. And so it's like, what is plaguing us in society very much is mental health and substance abuse. So it's like, I'm not saying it's always going to be the case that sexual abuse is going to come from there, but those three are very much often connected. And again, are we being purely reactionary? So these things are happening and they were dumping money and resources to deal with it after the fact, which is good, but how much can we reduce the after the fact on getting ahead of these things? So we need to be proactive.
So funny you say that, because when I think about my jail right now, so sexual abuse, mental health, right? My jail was built 30 years ago. It's still in great shape. The county's done really well keeping that facility in good shape, but it's a 30-year-old facility, and it was built for it goes back to where we started when I, 30 years ago was talking to my wife, I'd never want to live in a county this big. Well, it's not the same county anymore. We have different problems than when that jail was built 30 years ago. So sex offenders have to be segregated. I'm running out of space for sex offenders in the Utah County Jail. I'm having an issue. The jail had no capabilities of handling mental health issues. It was just not designed that way. And in our medical area, it wasn't designed to even come close to dealing with what we're dealing with. So we're having to remodel medical, do an addition, and then I've had to give up one of my pods to remodel it into mental health, because that is the reality of what we're dealing with, and it all costs money. We've done everything we can to get federal grants to help us do all these things, and we've done very well at that, but it costs money to provide these services, because these people are going to get out of this facility, and we'd like them to be hopefully a little better than when they came in. We want to make sure we can do everything we can to help. The reality is, and I'll admit this, is you put somebody in the facility that wasn't designed for mental health, and you can't take care of the problems like they should, they get worse in those facilities, because the problem's not being addressed. We don't have the capabilities. So, and then their sentence comes up and we release them back into the community worse than the way we found them. That's not cool.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And then the recidivism, which costs a ton of money. Yeah. For whatever we can do to mitigate the recidivism rate, the citizens should want that. I think we all want that, because not only the cost, but also the hidden cost for society itself.
Well, right after we had the sheriff's debate here in Davis County, we had the county commissioner debate. They had a massive argument down in Salt Lake County, because Salt Lake County went through a 30% tax increase, and that just blew up all over. Davis County tried to do the same thing, 30% tax increase, and that didn't go over well, so they ended up with a 15%. And so you can see how the county commissioners can really affect your guys' budgets, because they're out here trying to spend money on all these other facilities and buildings and not necessarily dedicating enough of the county budget to law enforcement.
Yeah.
How do you?
Yeah. So actually,
how do you deal with that?
I called Mike a few months ago, so I'll hit two of these aspects. So I feel that it should be incumbent within our county. I unfortunately haven't seen it, that I would like to see the sheriff go in front of the people and say, this is the amount of money we need, and this is why, and make the case for the increase for the taxation, because kind of how it's been historically is the sheriff goes to commission and makes the plea, and then the commission deliberate, and the commission tell the public. But it's like coming straight from the horse's mouth is always best. And so I feel like that is one aspect. Two, I actually had a conversation with Mike a few months ago, but as well as with our county attorney, Troy Rawlings, about the discussion of, in Davis County, for one, animal control is under their own taxing entity, but the sheriff's office and the county attorney is underneath the commission. So at the behest of the commission. And so some conversations I've had in the past, like, well, is there an avenue? Is there a way? Would it be right? Would it be best if we made it underneath our own taxing entity and we made that argument to the public that this is why we need it, and they decide whether we can have the tax increase or whether we do it? Because right now it's essentially the commission that decide whether we get that increase or not, which affects public safety. And all too often, many times historically, is the commission will come and say, well, we need to raise taxes because of law enforcement. We may ask for, I'll give you an arbitrary number, 15%. And they say, hey, we need to raise by 15% because of law enforcement. And then they give law enforcement or public safety 10% and take the 5% for something else. Yeah. So I've, unfortunately, because the state of Utah, people believe in public safety and they believe in the education system. And so all too often they're good with that, but then they're kind of used as a scapegoat. And
yeah, they do the same thing in education. Yeah. Raise the taxes and then the teachers.
They spend it someplace else, right? That's horrible. This is actually what I was just talking about. And I found that article, Rubicon dismissed with prejudice. I mean, so obviously no charges were brought up that stuck to Rubicon, but they found that they were not only underpaying, but not even paying a lot of these illegals from Mexico, where they were forcing them to do all this work and then just kind of leave them high and dry. Yeah. And just not even pay them anything at all. And that's kind of where that labor trafficking kind of got abused there. But that happened right here in Layton as well, right here in Davis County.
Because I'd be interested too if they're driving legally, if they're properly insured, and all those other questions too, if it's surrounding the vehicles. So.
Yeah, they could have very easily been doing all the above, right?
Yeah.
So as a sheriff, what do you need from the public? I mean, what would help you that if the public were to get on board with something? Obviously, budget is a big concern. Yeah. Awareness is a big concern. I mean,
I think a part of it is just the avoidance of apathy and being bought in and concerned for their own individual communities, and to have the feeling and the investment that they have skin in the game because they're living here, their kids are living here, and show that interest level. So when we try to educate, we try to explain where we're going, how we need help, that we'll be able to receive that, if that makes sense. Because all too often, like Mike hinted to with delegates in the past, is you have this conversation with people and they're like, absolutely no increase. And then you're like, well, let me explain why and kind of the road we're going down. And I think sometimes on elected officials too, and with the sheriff's office, I can only speak to ours, I would like to see strategic long-term plans, 12-month, 3-year, 5-year. And so I can present that to the public and try to say, these are what we need to work on. This is how we need to get better. And so that way, those that are involved in the public have the buy-in, they have the interest, they know where we're going. And so along the way, there's updates. Along the way, if changes need to be made, if increasing costs need to be done, I'm asking for it. There's not a huge question why.
That could go a long way. If the general public knows the buy-in, they know how their life actually improves.
Yeah, because it's one thing, like, people don't hear things all of a sudden, like you said, 50% increase, 30% increase, and everyone's like, what in the heck is going on? And it's like, we need to maybe have some more conversation along the way and hopefully try to get people to also be interested in listening, because we can always talk all day long, but if people aren't interested, that's one of the
Well, it's what I was saying at the very
challenges.
beginning. Everybody sees the traffic violations, right? That's what the public sees, is they're just traffic cops. Why don't they go do something more important than pulling me over, right? I hear that all the time. Sometimes I've said it myself. What?
They have nothing to do.
Nothing better to do over there.
It's all
And sadly enough, there's a lot more things that they are doing, but the public just simply does not see it, does not recognize how much sex trafficking, how much drug trafficking, fentanyl, all this stuff is happening. And then you guys can put it up on your websites. You can try to put it out there, but how many people are honestly going to the sheriff's website? There's maybe 0 to 1.
Right.
So, I mean, what can you do to help the public be more aware? I mean, there could be a social media presence, maybe.
Yeah.
But even pushing that out there may take some money as well. Some
I
budget.
think that, and as well as city council meetings, I've been hitting all of those the past 8 or 9 months, because some people will go to their city council meetings, some.
Not a lot.
Yeah, but virtually probably a whole lot less go to the county meetings too. And so it's like,
Sounds like you guys got to get your own TikTok and Instagram
yeah,
channel.
it is a challenge, but I also
Let me
think like
give
with
you
city
a big
council
hint.
members.
If you would like people to come to your council meeting, your county commission meeting, put a 287G contract on the agenda.
Yeah,
They'll
sure.
come.
Yeah.
They may not be your citizens, but they'll come.
Yeah, they might live an hour to the north from me. 45 minutes to the north.
How did that meeting go?
Oh, it was horrible.
How many people showed up to it?
Well, the first one, there was probably 300 plus people there.
Oh. Just
Yeah,
killing it.
the majority of people, I don't want to be disrespectful, but it is what it is, with, different colored hair and, all of their wonderfully worded, loving signs that they've got out. And of course they're all saying that they're Utah County residents, and I'm going,
The Black Lives Matter
I'm
movement.
like, I've never seen that. I would notice that colored hair walking down the road, but, yeah, it was horrible. And, just heckling the whole time. In fact, at one point, I'm up trying to, going back to, I was talking about with this unethical reporter saying, no answers, none of their questions were answered. So I'm up there answering their questions, and some guy right behind me keeps heckling me every time I say something, and loud, right? And the commission wasn't doing anything about it. And I finally stopped, and I turned around and I says, one more word out of you and I will personally drag you out of this meeting. And that's when, the commission's like, yeah, we've got to have decorum in here. And they were all, it was 4 hours of listening to them spout, this, I get their fears, but it's like, okay, so you're telling these boogeyman stories that you have no foundation of where they happened, when they happened. It's all this, hypothetical, I heard this happened, and you're like,
Meanwhile, trying to find the rapists and the drug dealers and the murderers.
yeah, craziness like, ICE agents are all raping these kids in the detention centers, and you're like, oh okay, where's the information on this?
They just throw stuff out there to see what sticks, right? It's all about the soundbite.
So yeah, it was horrible. And honestly, I think I think that probably did, unfortunately, when other police officials, law enforcement officials saw what I went through on that, it probably did affect them and saying, I don't really want to go through that.
Did you have to go through that to get the agreement?
Yeah, according to the policy, it's gotta be
Has to have public.
it's got to go through the commission. I mean, the commission took heed on it, but ultimately, it's mine. I own it. I'm the one that brought this and sat down with the commissioners and said, I'm going to do this, and here's why. And they backed me on it. And I will say, when we're talking about commissioners, I've had bad ones. My first term was horrible. I've got great commissioners right now, very supportive of public safety. I'm going to lose 2 of them, this go around because they're not running. And I'm really concerned on who I'm going to get because they have helped me make a huge difference in Utah County with their support of the sheriff's office. But they supported this wholeheartedly when I brought it to them, and we all just took the bullets, sucked them up, and this is what we need to do. This is what's right for our community. In fact, funny story on that too is I actually agreed to sit down when they say, they are not talking to anybody. I sat down with the ACLU and talked with them about this.
Wow, brave.
I know. Brave, dumb, you can label it what you want, right? But I'm like, okay, let's talk. So we sit down and talk, and of course, they want to know, every in and out about the contract and what I'm doing. And so, I explained what I've explained already about the model, how we're going to do it. We're focusing on high-level crime. And then they start making comments like, well, what are you going to do to repair the damage that you have caused to your community by signing this agreement with ICE? I'm like, well, what are you talking about? I said, well, we were in the meeting. There was, 4 hours, 300 people there that made comments. Not one person in your community stood up in support of you. And I'm like, you know what? The only truthful thing that's been said today is that, which is disappointing. I'm like, I stand there in front of all of these people, and not one of my community members showed up to support me on this, right? And that's a little...
It's apathy.
It is. Yeah. It's not fun.
Ignorance also.
Well, people don't want to be
here's the
labeled
thing.
too. They don't want to be labeled as being caring.
They don't. But here's what I finally, when the ACLU keeps throwing that in my face, I said, okay, so let's do a little challenge. I'm up for it right now. Let's go out. You guys pick any town in Utah County. Let's go walk down Main Street right now, and let's start asking them these questions and see if I've destroyed my relationship with the citizens of Utah County. Let's go. They didn't take me up on that.
Yeah, because they know better.
Yeah.
They know better. Well, you've got a pretty big election going on right now. What are the main differences between you and Perry?
Yeah.
And what do the voters need to know about you?
Yeah, so some of the main differences, I went through the convention only. I think that's sort of important to know because, going all the way to the convention, I've had many conversations with folks going into this process and campaigning, and I've been encouraged multiple times to get a campaign manager. I never did. I've ran this whole thing, even up to this point, by myself because I want the authenticity. I want to be able to have the connection with the people and the problems and to be able to see that process. And so when I speak with folks, they know it's coming from me. And it's not coming from people whispering in my ear what to say, where to go, and how to run. And so that is one key difference is I'm doing it by myself. I'm not paying someone tens of thousands of dollars to do those things for me. Additionally, going into the convention, I spent $6,500 on my campaign to my opponent's $50,000. And so
that's impressive.
When we look at government and we look at issues within government elected positions, money very much so becomes a resounding theme. And I don't like that.
Well, that's the problem with SB 54, right? SB 54 has killed the state. We've just talked about it hundreds of times on this podcast. SB 54 needs to die as soon as possible. Because what you're confronting is you've got this huge steam engine of 3 people are teaming up against everybody. I mean, you've got Bob Stevenson, you've got Perry, and then you've got Stuart Adams. They all are... Their primary supporters are all supporting each other. Yeah. They're campaigning together. All 3 of them are doing stuff together, sharing money between each other. I mean, it's a big team up between the 3 of them. And Bob Stevenson is probably one of the worst county commissioners we've ever had. Perry, he's qualified, but again, signature process, circumventing the caucus system, and then Stuart Adams has just been in office way too long.
Yeah.
But it's a David versus Goliath, and we had this discussion with Braden Adams. We're having this discussion with Trevor Lee.
Yeah.
It's a problem Davis County is facing. Right
Yeah,
now.
it is. And some other aspects are I've been working at the Davis County Sheriff's Office for the past 9 years now, and so I've been intimately aware of the issues, the problems, especially working internal affairs. I've investigated everything within that office, but also I have the current relationships, and I think that's one key point is it's not a one-man show. That when I got elected as sheriff, it's not beyond me that I'm not going to be the one making all. I'm going to be the primary point of accountability in the end, but I also know that I need to have good, wonderful people capable of dealing and helping me to deal with the problems we're facing in the county. If I go in there and say, yep, I'd have answers to everything, I need to be the best and the greatest, it's like, no, I need to be able to open up my ears and eyes and listen and evaluate. And that's one key aspect, again, that the military has invested hundreds of thousands of dollars into me as a military intelligence officer, to gather data, be able to see the situation, to be able to evaluate it and make good decisions, good calculated decisions, to be able to mitigate issues, but also look at the secondary and tertiary effects of those decisions. Because all too often we see in government, just for example, but I also see in law enforcement where we make decisions like, did we realize the trickle down effect, or did we try to perceive what that trickle down effect was going to happen from our decision? And I think too often we make decisions that negatively impact others and vice versa. And I think that's one key aspect we need to get on the same page. And for me, I've gone to, again, all the city council meetings, met with all of our legislators, sat down with every single law enforcement administration in the county. My competitor hasn't, because I know that those relationships are key, but also we need to be able to have those conversations. So that way we can avoid duplicated efforts. We can have a driving force in a certain direction together. But as well, if I'm about to do something and they're like, yeah, that doesn't sound right, instead of just avoiding it, I have that relationship. They have my phone number and I've asked them to call me. Let's have a discussion. So that way I know if I am making a decision that's wrong, or maybe they aren't aware of the whole picture, and I'm happy to be able to explain that. But I think all too often within this realm is we don't have that ability to speak truth to power and be able to come up and bring these ideas, because again, the folks that know the job best are the ones doing it every day. And I think too often we get ourselves so separated and disconnected from the line level work to the bloated bureaucracy at the top that we get disconnected and we're driving the train in the wrong direction. And so that is definitely what I'm after, and what I have, and my opponent doesn't. Again, he's been retired out of law enforcement for about 18 months, out of the county. I've been there. I've been dealing with it. I see it. But I also bring that aspect of the military, which is huge. The military trains leaders. Like, I've gone through over 1,000 hours of legitimate leadership courses from the NCO corps to the officer, and that 100% does translate. That translates in many avenues to be able to run a good, effective organization, because I am bought into the people. I want to be able to provide them resources, support, and the means and the capability so they can be the best at their job. But I also need to understand that I need to have the data to bring that to the commission and to the other people that control the purse strings to say, this is the reason why we need more money. This is the reason why we need to go in this direction, because it makes sense. And these are the problems we're facing. And again, too often we have people that are less interested in that. And going all the way back around to the start is, I've been running my own campaign, working and maintaining those 3 jobs with 4 kids. My wife's going through her master's program right now in social
Wow.
work. And so very much, and I wanted to be able to do that to prove a point that I am capable of juggling a lot of things when needed. And I can push through things and have the energy, have the focus, and the management skills to be able to deal with it. Because being a sheriff definitely is going to require that. Not all the time like this. I've been doing about 35 hours of campaigning in addition to my 40-hour work week. So it's been heavy, but again, this is my way to show I am vested. I am doing it. I'm knocking doors. I'm meeting with elected officials to be able to solve these problems. Because again, folks that are doing this job like I am, that are really truly vested, they hate always being reactionary. They hate not actually dealing and getting after the problems. We get in this to be problem solvers. And so let us go and let us have the capability and means to be proactive in finding the problems in our society and trying to cut the head off of that thing, or do our best to be able to do that. But unfortunately, I've seen by and large the past several years, we are just floating around in the abyss. And it's like, no, let's actually
like
get
he's
back
saying,
to
you're
it.
being reactionary and not being proactive, right? It all comes down to that budget.
Yeah.
And that's difficult to push.
Yeah. And I think it gets back to the creativeness and having the connection with the folks doing the job every day. Whereas they say, hey, we need this, boss. We need this new program. We need this new software. We need X, Y, and Z. We need more personnel. I'm like, got it. I'll go fight that. Then come back like, okay, I got half. How can we better streamline this? what else can we do? And I think too often we have people at the leadership heads, quote unquote leadership heads, that they always think that they know best, but they don't have that translation and that communication line, and that's severed. And I think too often they just rely on the merits, and I won't even say merits, just the time versus the real merits, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
I think one thing to keep in mind too is when you're looking at things, it's really easy to say, you've heard me say, hey, Commission, I need more detectives in sex crimes, right? So it's really easy. We also said, well, where's the fat within the office? Where can we streamline? Where can we do this? Here's what, and it's an easy campaign answer to say, well, I'm just going to move X to Y, and it's like, okay, so you got to look at the big picture, because we've said a couple times that the people just, when they think of us, they see the officer out making a traffic stop, right? Well, that's got to happen. So you can't just say, okay, sex crimes and drugs are the most important, so I'm going to move everything over here, because now you're going to have accidents, you're going to have DUIs, you're going to have all sorts of problems that are not being addressed. And so it's being able to manage the bigger picture and be able to explain, hey, this is why. Yeah, I've got deputies. I've got a lot of deputies, but they all have jobs that are important. So I can't just pull everybody off of X to go do Y, or we're going to suffer in this area too. It's important that we keep the smaller crimes in check, and that we're there, because most interactions with the public are these lower level crimes. These average everyday things that are happening in our communities. And I won't name any cities. I probably should, but I won't, because I don't deserve it. But I've never wanted to become a jurisdiction where we get to the point, and there are some in this state, where, if your car gets burglarized out here in your parking lot or in your driveway, and you live in a certain jurisdiction, and you call and say, hey, my car was burglarized, you're probably going to be directed to a web page to fill out, this is what happened, and you're probably never going to see an officer. It's just not going to happen. And so for me, I think you have to equate in with your community, what level of service as a citizen is okay for you. Is that okay for you? Or do you want a department that actually has resources to send someone to your house, actually see what happened, take a crime report, see if there's any evidence that could lead to any type of arrest that you're not really going to know as the citizen looking at things? What level of service are you okay with? And if you're okay with that model, then maybe we can save you some tax dollars, and we can get rid of some officers.
$1 per household.
Yeah.
Savings.
Well, Mike, you set the bar pretty high. I mean, I was born and raised in Utah County. All my family's down there. I'm the only one that lives outside of Utah County. So my sister really well. You set the bar really high. So a lot of other sheriffs throughout the state are really, really kind of looking up to that. And I know from just having my conversations around Utah County, everybody's pretty proud of having you as the sheriff. I mean, that's pretty honest opinion of what I'm seeing down there. And I'm sure the people up here in Davis County want to see the same thing. And so we absolutely do not want to have, Lisa has got a country podcast, as Perry in as sheriff. We do want to have anybody even associated with signature gathering. We don't think that sets the right standard, the right moral values. Obviously, you're our pick from day one, so you're completely endorsed by this podcast. And so hopefully our listeners are listening to that, put you into office, because I think you're going to pattern a lot of what he's been doing down in Utah County and bring that up to Davis County as well.
Yeah, I'd love to have more conversations too when those times come, but I know he's a busy man.
Well, can I say something on that too? Of course, as a sitting sheriff, I'm not going to endorse any sheriffs, but I will say this: if you've been paying attention to, and I say this to voters, if you've been paying attention to the media right now, there is an attack on sheriffs right now. You're seeing it throughout the state, and it's funny how it always kind of happens, when it comes time for election process. These weren't problems before, but now all of a sudden, what are we going to do with these rogue sheriffs in the state of Utah? And there's this narrative going out in the media that, and I don't know if you've caught this, but
I've caught it, but it's a push narrative because sheriffs are not under their control.
Right.
They don't. They
that's
can't control
where
you.
that's where it's coming
And so
from.
they-
And that's
you have these people in power that put that narrative out there, and they'll push it out there in social media, and then it gets this big old voice behind it. And it's because they cannot control you, and they're afraid.
And
of
I
that.
love that you said that. You see it. The sheriffs in the state of Utah, through the Utah Sheriff's Association, have worked hard over the last 8 years to establish ourselves in the state of Utah as a voice in the state. In the legislative process and everything else, we have worked hard to get ourselves to a level where we are being heard. So it makes sense that we're trying to have our legs cut out from under us. Maybe we're
Want to
getting,
take your voice. They're
maybe
afraid
our
of you.
voice has
If
got
they
a little
can't control
too
you,
much.
then you shouldn't be there.
So this is what my message would be to voters. Having an elected sheriff is absolutely has to happen, right? That's why I was passionate, and the sheriffs were passionate to get it into the state constitution to protect it. And luckily we did, because it's really under attack right now. But with that, the voters have a responsibility. We need good men and women to be elected to these positions. We need people that will uphold the values of a sheriff and not discredit that office. So, do your homework, look into the candidates, and make sure you are picking the person that has the value, has the ethics, I've had delegates tell me this, on a resume. Has the resume? Well, resume doesn't matter to me. And I'm like, well, what are you talking about? A resume doesn't matter to you. A resume should matter to you when you're hiring somebody, like in my office that has, a $60 million plus budget. You don't think a resume matters, that you're going to put somebody in a place that actually knows what they're doing? It should matter. So make sure that person is qualified for the position and is going to represent not just your county, but the state, because our association is strong and we need it to be strong and have that voice.
I think it was Paul. No, it's not Paul. Hartley. Oh, what's his name?
Greg Hartley.
Oh, it was Greg. Yeah, I met and had a conversation with him at the Capitol last year during session, and
Well, tell me who
the
Greg Hartley
session's doing a
is.
great job. Yeah, he works for the Sheriff's Association.
Those in the audience who don't know who he is.
Yeah, so I know he works for the Sheriff's Association, but I know all the details. He does a great job with combining the efforts.
We hired Greg Hartley and Greg Hughes. We hired their.
Love Greg Hughes.
Yeah,
I'm trying to get him on here, so
Yeah,
He's got his own show, right?
I know he does. So we're still
But
trying to get him.
we hired them, and when I say that was probably 7 years ago. So that was part of our, hey, we need.
Is that when it started? I apologize.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah, I didn't know.
Yeah. Well, I'll tell you, for me, coming in as a new sheriff, going up to the legislative session, there was really no rhyme or reason. Hey, we don't like this bill. Okay, you're going to say this. You're going to say that. You're not going to say anything. And then, of course, the guy you said don't say anything is the first one up saying something that shouldn't be said. And so it's like, we got to get this under control. And bringing the Hughes and Hartley on, that was part of our movement to we got to establish this association as being a serious association in this state that we have nothing but the best interest for the state of Utah to make sure that law and order is done effectively, that people are treated with dignity, the Constitution is being upheld at all levels. And here's the reality. We love our lawmakers. Well, not all of them. We love some of our lawmakers. And a lot, even the ones that have the best intentions, they'll put a law through that sounds good, but it's like, well, let us help you. Here's how that translates to the boots on the ground when that hits our communities. These parts of your law don't make sense. They won't work. They're going to cause problems. And so we've got to have a voice. We got to have a seat at those tables to say, listen, let us help. And then there are just some that you're like, guys, no, this bill is horrible. We're going to fight you to the nail on it because it's going to make our communities less safe when you do this.
Yeah, or the ones that are there's no money associated, just more work on the agencies.
You'll see. Being the sheriff, there are so many unfunded mandates that come out. I mean, going back to the courts, by statute, the sheriff shall provide security for the state courts. right? So I get of the cost of doing that, the state reimburses me about 24% of the total cost of that. The rest of that is on the Utah County taxpayers and out of my budget. When I came on as sheriff, if you get elected, these are the fun things you get to deal with. I've been in office probably 2 months, and the brand new 4th District Court building, beautiful building, is coming online in Utah County in Provo. One of my lieutenants that's assigned to that division says, Sheriff, we need to meet and talk about the staffing plan. Sit down, okay, to run this new building, this is what it's going to take. And and as we looked at it, it was a very conservative staffing plan. Well, it was I think it was about $1.6 million increase to my budget. That is a 2-month sheriff. I got to go to my commission and say, I need $1.6 million to staff a building that's not ours, but the state law says I've got to staff this building. So those are the fun things you get to deal with.
Brutal conversation.
Even simple things like the software program, right? We use LEFTA, and that was one of the requirements that came down from the state. And it's like, yeah, it's good, but then again, unfunded, and it costs more money.
It happens all the time.
Yeah.
I can't imagine trying to work through those budget crises is all the time, particularly when you have stuff that's completely unintended, unbudgeted for, unexpected, and all of a sudden you have to staff it all. We really, really hope that you get elected. I'm hoping that everybody in the audience has listened to this up in Davis County. I hope once you are elected, you're able to get one of those memorandums of understanding in there. We can support with ICE. Maybe you could copy his agreement.
Yeah, we would have some conversations for sure.
More than happy to help.
Because all I've ever looked at is I've gone to the website, I've read through it, I've tried to understand the best of my abilities, but of course it's not always the same in action.
He can help you run through that public meeting a little bit. Say, hey, kids, this is what you probably do not want to do.
Yeah, always learn from the good and the bad. Always learn from those. So,
well, this has been so informative because as not just even a delegate, as a voter, you've given me new things to think about when I'm vetting people.
Yeah.
Kind of one of the last things I want to do is actual statistical numbers. So on a monthly basis, kind of let the public know what you're facing in Utah County, and we'll go to Davis County, as far as how many people you're bringing in on a monthly basis for sex crimes, drug trafficking, what you're finding on our roads, how serious are all these situations? Give us some actual...
I don't...
Or as close as possible.
I don't have those numbers with me to tell you, honestly. Utah County is the second largest county in the state, and the second largest jail in the state. And, with all of the PDs that I work with, which there's a lot, I don't have that number. I'd have to go back and pull it for you. So I'd hate...
Just your officers alone, how many are you guys bringing in? But just your officers, not even counting the cities.
A month?
Yeah.
Hundreds of, I mean, so if you're looking at the Utah County Jail, you average booked into Utah County Jail 1,400 people a month is your average total for crimes. And when you look at that,
how many of those are like drug or sex crimes? Or not necessarily white collar crimes.
Most, because when we were in a position where lower level like Class Bs, unless there's some extenuating circumstances where we can't accept them because we've hit a threshold. We're nowhere near where Salt Lake County is, but we're close. I mean, I'm running the jail right now especially with our remodel I talked about in place. We're sitting about in the 90% full at any one time. So and it's a jail with 1,100 beds. So most of the people in that are the people that are on more substantial crimes. And what I can tell you also on that, with the general population, is Utah has went through a phase, really started, I think it's back in 2015 with JRI, where they took, and I'll flat out, I'll own this, I'll blame this for it. And it's not completely their fault, but I think it adds to it. They took felony level drug offenses and they popped them down to misdemeanor drug offenses. Now, if you get, your third, it pops back up to a felony. But what we found as a result, now rolling into where we are now, is that by the time they actually get into the system, which, it was deemed the evil, jail's evil, it ruins people. It's like, no, it doesn't. Some people need to go to jail. That's part of getting healthy, part of getting better. We have programs in there. But what we found is We are now in a position where our inmates are further down the road. They're hardened. They're more violent. My deputies in the jail are getting assaulted all the time. My use of force reports coming out of the jail are probably 50 to 1 per what happens out on the road. There's assaults in my jail all the time. So I've got a more violent offender in there. To answer your question in kind of a broad sense, what the people that are in there are the higher level crimes that are in there. So yes, that would include the serious assaults, the DVs, the drug offenses, the sexual crimes,
Do you think you're doing 1,000 plus a month in just those?
Yeah, because we're right now, unless a city has compelling reasons why they need a Class B in, we're not putting Class Bs in. We'll put a DUI in. So there's a few Class Bs that'll go in, but if you get a trespassing ticket or something like that.
Or if you didn't pay a speeding ticket and you did show up to your court hearing and
Well, if there's a warrant out, you'll come in, but most, they'll post bail pretty quick on something like that.
Yeah. So now housing.
Yeah, ours aren't that high. Yeah, so we don't have that.
What's
high
Davis
issues,
County
but
facing? What do you think the numbers are?
It's been about 4 years since I worked in criminal investigations, but by and large, person crimes were what the investigators worked on the most. So whether that's assault, whether that's DV, whether that's sexual abuse cases, but we also are very much busy within the juvenile, within the child section. We get so many CAN-Rs a day, which is essentially if we have children within just for example, Davis County School District, and they report to their teacher that, they might have been hit by a parent or something else. Usually a report's generated and that pops out and that goes to us and also DCFS and says, hey, this needs to be looked at. And so we get so many of those on a weekly basis. And a lot of those are a lot of just like work processes. And of course we need to do our due diligence with it. But sometimes it's just a lot of work and there's not substance there. And so there are a lot of dead ends when it comes to it. But no, by and large, person crimes are on the increase, and it's usually the hidden ones in child crimes again. But again, those are very much half and half reactionary versus proactive. I know that doesn't really answer your question wholly, but in all the way. But again, the Davis Narcotics Strike Force does a fantastic job, and they are always busy finding drugs, finding gang members within the county, but as well as they work, like Mike said, not even just in Davis. They'll go branch out into Weber and
so on a monthly basis, they're doing 1,000 plus. But how many think are coming into the jail on a monthly basis in Davis?
I haven't asked that question. I could give you an arbitrary number that I would say probably half that, but I don't know how accurate that is. But that would be countywide. That wouldn't be just from the sheriff's office. That would be countywide. But we also get, I don't know with Mike, but we also get a decent amount of folks that investigators, whether federal or state, who arrest people within the Salt Lake area, but they'll bring them to our jail because there's room, because the Salt Lake jail is so full. And so there's also
Salt Lake's
big. Yeah,
there's also that staffing or that capacity issue.
I'll tell you another interesting, I think it's a little interesting, not big, but, looking at you, not that you're a bad girl, but we are getting more women than, again, a jail 30 years ago that wasn't really built. You only get a few bad girls in the community. Well, our female population is just growing to the point where it's like, okay, we need to figure something out here to create more room for women.
Yeah.
That's interesting.
Yeah.
Interesting fact that's happening. On a side note, so my oldest son is National Guard as well. Was active Army for a very, very long time now. He's in National Guard and intelligence. But he applied to be a Davis County officer in the prison system.
Yeah.
And it went 4.5 months, and they never reported back to him on his background check. Just nothing ever happened. They get hired and just kind
How long ago was that?
just this last month.
No. Yeah. Yeah, I don't know.
Nothing ever happened.
I'll have to look,
never got back to him. Nothing.
Yeah, that's interesting.
He would have got another job by now, but he said he sat around in limbo for a long time and just no one ever saw him.
Sending down to Utah
Yeah.
County.
Yeah. And sometimes we do have some old models where it's very much not always run by software programs.
And he's got top security clearance in the
Yeah.
Army because he's in intelligence, but
Right.
they couldn't get his background check done for the jails.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, and that's unfortunate because we definitely need really good people within the correction side, and that's something I was going to say earlier when Mike was talking is I think the correction folks don't get enough credit. And it's a hard job to do.
It's a very hard job.
Especially for how long they're in there and the type of people they're dealing with all day. Like those of us who worked out in patrol investigations, we come across really good people. In the jail, I'm not saying you won't, but the vast majority of the population, you just have to be honest, they're in there for a reason. And that's what you have to deal with on a daily basis.
Here's the reality. I don't know about you, but, when I out on the road arresting people, then I had to get them to jail. I couldn't get them there fast enough because I'm like, I don't want to hang out with you.
Yeah. Yeah. They're yelling and kicking, and it's like, yeah. And then they just...
And then, our correctional deputies are awesome. They have a tough job and they don't get the accolades they should. They do phenomenal.
So what's the main difference between your correctional workers, people, versus the sheriffs themselves, the deputies?
There is actually a certification difference. So you've got your correctional certification and then your law enforcement side of the house. And we'll try, if they have a desire to get a law enforcement certification in corrections, we'll send them through the academy, and hopefully, if they want to test and come out on the road, we support that 100%. But the correctional side, the biggest differences would be that's where you work. You go and you hang out with inmates all day long. And in the Utah County Jail, I don't know the setup in yours. It's probably similar. But ours is a direct supervision facility. So these guys, you're in a pod. Your desk is sitting in the pod. You are in with these guys, and you spend your shift.
Not like a tower or a room that overlooks the pod or anything like that.
Well, in our max, we do have our segregation area, our max. That one is set up that way where you're in a room that has a one-way mirror. It's kind of just more tinted, so they can't see as well, but you're watching the cells, right? But every other unit is a direct supervision where you're out with these guys, and they're out for rec time or whatever, and you're right out there in the room with them. And I've had I said, multiple deputies that have been assaulted, and the model was that it was kind of when that facility was built in the early 90s, it was the model that this would help with being able to help with recidivism and whatever, because you're part of this pod and the deputies right in there with them. But again, getting to this more hardened inmate that we're dealing with, it's resulted in some very serious injuries to my deputies.
Yeah, that's tough.
So you're not just in there relax the whole time. Like,
how do you deal with that? You got to go home and unplug from dealing with
the things I'm sure
all day long.
The things that are said to you all day, and
I can imagine
said or thrown on you, slimed. It's horrible.
All right, John, we're going to give you the last say. So speak to your voter. Tell them that camera right there. Tell them what you want them to hear for this upcoming primary.
Yeah, for this upcoming primary, look, folks, I'm all ears. I've been going through this process, knocking on doors, talking to everybody as much as possible, because I do think there are real issues, not only in the sheriff's office that we can do better, but also within society as a whole. As we look at the future, we look at how technology is evolving and changing, and artificial technology, cyber, and fraud on that scale. I have worries about our future. I have worries about law enforcement if we are leaning into these issues and also trying to be preventative, to have the ability to investigate, prepare ourselves for this future aspect. And especially when it comes to our children, I think that we need to be able to try to find more ways to work together to address these problems and prepare for them. But one thing you'll definitely get from me is I'm going to work my tail end off. That's what I know. That's what I've been doing. That's what I've consistently done. And again, going to character, what you see is what you get. There's nothing hidden. There's no hidden objectives. The objective is to do good at our job and to take care of the people and to uphold our constitutional rights. Done that as a military intelligence officer and as well as an enlisted member of the armed forces, and as a Davis County our internal affairs investigator as well. So thank you. I asked for your vote. My email and my phone number is on my website. I am happy to talk to anybody, answer any questions.
We'll kind of say what that website is.
So AtkinForSheriff.com.
AtkinForSheriff.com. Okay.
Yes, sir.
Well, we greatly appreciate you guys being on. It's been an awesome conversation. I hope the public out there kind of gets a little more in-depth knowledge about what's really happening in our communities and has less apathy and a little more support for when you guys actually need something. Finding out that Utah County isn't just Happy Valley and Davis County the same thing, that there's active crime in there. There's a lot more than just traffic tickets, that officers are actually out there doing something more important, right? What this does is pull people over. But that comes at a cost, comes with a lot of money behind it, and we just need to be able to support all that. So this is the God and Country podcast. Like, subscribe, and share again. Purchase T-shirts. Help us support the channel. Support these guys. Help us make sure that Jon Atkin get into office here in Davis County, and then obviously Mike Smith down in Utah County. I think you got enough popularity going on down there. You're not going to have a lot of fear for a long time. So when are you up for election the next time?
Right now, it's the same.
You're unopposed right now? Or?
Right now, unopposed.
That's what I thought. You're unopposed right now.
Yeah, it's I've never had that before, so I'm not complaining.
I think you're doing such a good a job that people are like, no, we're not running against him. We'll just keep him in office, right? So that's what I thought. You're unopposed right now.
God bless you for all you both do.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah. Support your law enforcement. This is God and Country. We'll see everybody in the next show.